On this episode of View the Right Thing, it's a tale of two visionary directors who took on the task of attempting to film an adaptation of one of the most highly revered works of science fiction literature many consider to be unfilmable. First up, Wes and Steve hitch a ride to the desert planet of Arrakis to see David Lynch's version of Dune.
Father, the sleeper has awakened! He who controls the spice controls the universe. Long live the fighters!
Then they come back down to Earth to learn about the original, ambitious version that almost made it to the big screen in the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune.
His vision was so huge, so beyond what anybody else was doing at that time. Things that George Lucas wasn't even going to try with Star Wars. This is a movie that has its fingerprints all over so many other movies. Blade Runner, William Gibson, Matrix.
It's time, once again, for View the Right Thing.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hey, welcome back to
everyone.
Another episode of You the Right
Indiana
Thing.
Jaws.
Did you see the look I'm giving Steve right now?
It's a pretty intense look. It was sort of like I can't believe you're still making that joke
Yeah.
look,
Hey, you're not supposed to be here.
but in a friendly way. That's true. We had a pretty magical set of circumstances arise during our last recording.
So to recap, the new format of the show is that we do one movie every week, but you're only going to be here every other week, and I'm going to have guest hosts with us
Correct.
on those off weeks. But you were here last time,
I was here last time for Casablanca.
and
Casablanca.
we did 2 movies this week. So we basically immediately broke our new format.
We
this
immediately
episode.
broke our new format because we had an absolutely magical moment with
Yeah.
the Muppet Bucket. We selected a pair of movies that have to be watched as a pair
Yeah.
that I've been dying to watch since the day we put this show together.
You've been dying for me to watch them as well.
Well, and I've been dying to revisit them myself.
Yeah.
Those movies are Dune, 1984, directed by David Lynch, and the recent documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, about Alejandro Jodorowsky's attempt to make Dune in the mid-1970s.
Right.
We finally drew that one slip of paper from our very crowded Muppet bucket, and we're starting the year off with a second bang.
Okay.
Because I feel like Casablanca is a pretty good way to start the year
It
for
was.
a movie, a movie conversation show.
Yeah.
Now, that was a bang. This is a second bang
Yeah.
to get us into February.
We had the big bang, then we had the little bang.
Yeah. Happy belated Groundhog Day, everyone, and happy early Valentine's Day.
Yep. We had
And,
we had to date the recording session.
well, I hardly dated it. I
Right.
just let him know that it happened sometime after Groundhog, sometime before Valentine. And happy early Chinese New Year. I think that happens just within the next couple days now. So now I have dated it.
Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month. We're coming into the year of the monkey, if I'm not mistaken, for the Chinese zodiac.
Okay.
I myself am a ram. The year of the ram is now concluding.
Yeah.
The year of the monkey begins.
I think I'm a horse or a rat or something.
What
I
year
don't
were you
know.
born?
78.
I think horse.
Okay.
I think you're a
I'll
horse.
take horse.
I believe so. The rat is basically the 12 o'clock position, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
okay.
I can tell you why.
I mean, I don't know if we need to go into it.
All right, we won't go into it.
Have you in the last week, have you seen any movies in the theater?
In the theater, I don't think I have.
I have.
But what's with that? What have you seen?
Well, I saw 2 movies, but we'll only talk about one.
Okay.
I saw Ride Along 2.
Ride Along 2, starring Ice Cube and Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
And Olivia Munn, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Which was interesting because I just rewatched Straight Outta Compton.
Oh, yeah?
So it was interesting to kind of go from the story of Ice Cube to him as an actor
Yeah.
in a not so great comedy. But we're not going to talk about that one.
Okay.
I saw The Boy
The Boy.
with Lauren Cohen.
Maggie from The Walking Dead.
I love Maggie from The Walking Dead. I like
Mrs. Glenn.
I liked her on Supernatural
Cool.
as sort of a Tomb Raider Lara Croft kind of character.
Yeah. What about in that Van Wilder sequel that she's in?
I didn't see that Van Wilder sequel, so
Pretty sure she's in a Van Wilder sequel, which is pretty cool.
yeah.
Van Wilder 8.
Van Wilder 8. The Van Wilding.
Still Van.
Okay.
Yeah, the Van Wilding. Yeah. I forget what the actual subtitle is.
Yeah, so this, you know...
The boy.
It was all right.
Now, this is about a boy who is a robot, and his mom loves him very much, and he loves his human mom very much. And then he goes on an odyssey to try to bring her back to life.
None of that is accurate.
None of it at all. None of it's accurate.
No. So, Lauren Cohen plays a character named Greta.
Greta. I have a friend named Greta.
She plays an American.
Oh.
Even though she's British in real life.
A Brit playing an American for once.
Which she does most of the time
On The
anyways.
Walking Dead, yeah.
And then she's sort of running from something, so she's come to the United Kingdom to take a job as a nanny, which apparently pays really well.
Sure.
This particular job. And she arrives at this beautiful countryside estate. These people have a lot of money, apparently. And when she finds the boy that she's going to take care of, she finds that it's a doll.
A doll of a boy.
Named Brahms.
A boy-shaped doll named Brahms?
Yeah, like as in the musician, the composer.
Okay.
And Bear McCreary?
Bear McCreary?
McCreary.
Plays who?
He's a composer. He does the music for it. He also does the music for The Walking Dead.
Oh, cool.
And he uses Brahms quite a bit in the score, which was pretty cool.
That makes sense.
He found some pretty creative places to put the Brahms lullaby.
Ooh.
But the movie's kind of dumb. It's I don't know. It's just kind of a dumb, like ghosty movie. But it does have a pretty good little twist near the end of the film. I did not see coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like mind blowing or anything.
You don't want to spoil it for the viewsters.
I don't think I want to spoil it for the viewsters, but yeah, I thought
it's a neat twist.
Yeah, I thought it was a neat twist. Now, see, I use Movie Pass.
Right.
So for those that don't know what Movie Pass is, it's like a card that lets me go to movies if they're not like 3D or whatever. I can't go see 3D with it, but it lets me go see movies. I can go see a movie once a day.
Nice.
So yeah,
for free.
Not for free. Well,
you pay a monthly subscription.
You pay a monthly subscription like you would like a Netflix or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but with that mentality, I kind of go to a lot of movies with the idea that it's essentially free. So I tend to not be too hard on unless I'm doing like a real critique on a film.
Interesting.
I try not to be too hard on them for the most part.
All right.
There are times where there's just a doozy. I'm looking at you, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Where
I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
It's just so bad.
That movie was perfect.
Yeah.
All that martial arts that they didn't do at all.
There's just nonsense, that movie. So there's some movies like that where I just can't get past it. But for the most part, I'm pretty lenient. I don't think The Boy was a great film.
No.
But it was okay.
All right.
For feeling like I didn't really pay for it.
All right.
So,
I like the sound of that, I guess. I mean,
it was atmospheric.
I like your warning about the movie. Atmospheric, you say?
Yeah, I mean, the house is beautiful and
music by Goblin. Oh wait, you already went over who composed.
No, not music by Goblin, unfortunately.
Okay. All right.
But
all right.
But yeah, so The Boy, it was
all right.
Pretty resounding review.
Fair enough. I did not see The Boy. I'm trying to think of what I have seen that's new within the last week. I don't think I had time to get to the movie theater within the last week. It's making me very sad.
I'm hoping the next time I do a podcast, I can talk about the fact that I've seen Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
You have?
I'm hoping for the next episode. I will have seen it.
I get you. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to look forward to. I might be going to see Spectre tomorrow over at the $3 theater.
It's very fun.
I hope so. I like, I enjoy James Bond. I'm not a huge Bond fan, but I enjoy it enough.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
in the vein of the Roger Moore era. The more silly
Does he
stunts
say
that don't make
judo
sense.
chop as he actually judo chops people?
He does not. But the stunts don't make as much sense as they have in the previous Daniel Craig films, and it's
Interesting.
bigger. It's bigger.
The stunts don't make as much sense.
Yeah, for the most part in the Daniel Craig films, while they're fantastic, there is some sense of like, maybe that could happen.
Yeah,
and
this
this one
very realistic. Yeah, okay.
In this, it's like, no way that can happen.
Wow.
But,
all right.
But they're fun to watch. So,
Okay. All right.
To go into it with the, hey, this is going to be a fun movie.
I like that a lot. Okay. If I see Spectre, I'll go into it with that mindset.
Yeah.
Should we talk about Dune?
I guess we should talk about...
All right.
Let's talk about Dune. Let's talk about
All right.
Dune, baby.
So, if you're listening to this, we assume you've watched Dune and Jodorowsky's Dune. We just finished Jodorowsky's Dune not too long ago. I'm still tripping out quite a bit. I'll admit it.
Yeah.
I have never done hallucinogenic drugs.
There's that moment with the kaleidoscope that definitely is trippy.
There's a lot of fun. There are two movies that I have seen in my life that both made me say, wow, I never need to do hallucinogenic drugs.
Okay.
The first one is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Starring Johnny Depp as Hunter S. Thompson. That scene when, pretty early in the movie, when the people are kind of turning into creepy lizards.
Uh-huh.
That scene, while watching it as a teenager in the movie theater, made me say, wow, cool. I never need to try hallucinogenic drugs. The second time...
Terry Gilliam. So,
Yeah.
Wacky.
Quite wacky. The second time that thought occurred to me was a few months ago watching Jodorowsky's Dune over at the Cine Family. I just remember thinking it's a documentary. A lot of the animation in it is fairly simplistic, and there's some really, really beautiful, still photos and paintings and whatnot going on.
Sure.
But it's still done in a way that made me feel like I was tripping real nicely. I have to assume. I've never tripped.
Yeah.
But this movie made me feel like I was tripping.
Sure.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
Because then when it's over, no harm, no foul.
There's some like crazy hypnotic stuff in it.
I agree.
Especially that, like I said, that kaleidoscope moment.
Yeah.
When Dan O'Bannon is talking.
Yeah, and he talks about the this moment. Yeah. So if you're listening, you've probably seen that. We're going to get through this pretty fast because there's just so much to discuss in these two movies that we've almost got to just take the broad strokes.
Yeah. Can I say something? We debated. I had never seen either of these films.
Right.
And we debated about how I should watch them, whether or not I should watch Dune first, like most people have,
yes,
and then Jodorowsky's Dune, or the other way around.
Yes.
And we opted to do it the way most people experience the films.
The chronological way, I guess you could
I'll be
say.
honest with you. If I had watched Jodorowsky's Dune
Yeah.
first, I would have been much more excited to watch Dune.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I would have been like, okay, if that's what this guy was doing
Yeah.
or wanted to do, what happened? What
Wow.
really happened? I would have been very excited for it.
I mean, I tried.
You did.
I tried to convince you to do it that way.
And we didn't know for sure because we didn't know anybody who had done it that way. So, but we watched it the way most people have seen the films, and it was watching some movies.
See, I enjoyed myself from minute 1 to minute however many hundred.
You know how you have a coffee countdown?
Yeah.
I almost needed a coffee
You
countdown.
almost needed a
during
coffee
Dune.
countdown?
Not during Jodorowsky's.
Yeah. But for David Lynch's Dune, 1984, you almost needed a coffee countdown.
Yeah, I like David Lynch.
Yeah.
I like Kyle MacLachlan. I like Patrick Stewart.
Sure. What's her name? The woman who played Lady Jessica? She's all I need in that movie.
I like Sean Young.
Sure.
I like what's his face? Dean Stockwell. An awful lot.
Stockwell.
Sting. I'm
Sting's
all right
in
with
there.
Sting. But this movie
Dune.
was slow.
You think so?
I was often kind of bored out of my mind. To be honest with you.
Wow. Out of your mind.
Yeah, there were moments where I was just like, oh, how... There, actually, I checked the time one time.
Yeah.
And we were only 20 minutes in. I was very disappointed.
Whoa! Yeah. Wow!
Because I remember thinking, this would be the first coffee countdown. This moment here is like,
yeah, you've never fallen asleep during our movies.
Yeah,
and I almost always do.
And I still did not fall asleep during Dune, but man, did I want to multiple
You wanted
times.
to. Interesting. See, I first saw Dune as a very young child on cable TV.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's got that young kid
Sure.
feeling that comes along with it, you know?
Well, and I like that we have a very different take on it because, I know there are a lot of people who are big fans of that film, and I don't want to be just like trashing their film or anything like that.
Right.
I definitely respect. I got a lot of movies that I really like that people don't like. So, I definitely have respect for it. But man, it's not my cup of tea. But let's
your cup of tea. Let's dive into the story.
Yeah.
All right, so we did a fun little thing before we started watching it. We went to YouTube and we watched the prologue, right?
The extended prologue.
The extended prologue, which is set over a bunch of paintings of things going on.
Yep.
And it tells the story of how in the year 6000, mankind was basically enslaved by the computers that it had created.
Right.
So, really enslaved by men who owned these computers, these thinking machines.
Right.
That was in the year 6000. Then as time goes by, the people who have been enslaved by these machines, they start to get sick of this, being in bondage. They revolt. If I'm not mistaken, that was known as the Butlerian Jihad, where basically mankind set out to destroy absolutely every kind of robot and computer that existed, right?
It's a little, it made me think of The Matrix a little bit.
Sure, absolutely.
And thinking that The Matrix was influenced by...
I think it's very safe to say that it was.
Dune. Sort of this idea, because they talk about in this intro about how... humans are slaves, and they basically are essentially mindless. Like, they have no education or anything anymore.
They're kind of mindless slaves.
And that's essentially what The Matrix is about the slave revolt.
Yeah.
So, against the machines.
Against those dastardly machines. So the humans rise up, and they decide, not only are we going to, free ourselves from our robot overlords, we're going to set out to destroy all robots and thinking machines that we can possibly find. This has very little to do with the movie itself, other than the fact that the movie then takes place in the year 10,191. Now, in this prologue, they say 192. But then in the actual theatrical cut, they say 10,191. That is pretty far into the future. We're talking over 8,000 years into the future from where you and I are sitting right now.
Right.
So, sorry, grandkids, you're going to be enslaved by robots. Maybe not our grandkids, but our, distant descendants. Gosh, where are we? All right, so now all of mankind exists on several different planets throughout a galaxy. And basically everyone is addicted to the hottest commodity in the galaxy, known as the spice melange, the orange spice melange, which is mined from only one source in the known galaxy, a desert planet called Arrakis, also known as Dune. Right? The music of Toto kicks in.
Sure.
All right, so it's the year 10191. Everybody is addicted to this stuff called spice. They put it in all the food. There are various, modes of, what do you want to call it? Not quite power. Yeah, but yeah, kind of power. The two most important sort of societies that are controlling things are the Spacing Guild, who basically mainline the spice in order to hyper-evolve their brains and even transform their bodies to turn themselves into navigators. And this allows them to literally fold space. So they're basically like a living, formerly human light-speed hyperdrive, like out of Star Wars or out of Star Trek, right?
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
They're not really hyperdrive if they're folding space, right?
Well, it's just the idea.
When you hear people talk about wormholes, they use an example of, like, if you take a piece of paper and you draw a point here and a point here. But they can't see, the listeners can't see it. And then you fold the paper
so that the points touch.
That's a wormhole.
Yeah, you're folding space.
Folding space. So it's not really so much as getting there faster speed-wise.
Yeah,
you're getting there faster distance-wise, right?
The point is the guild navigators make it possible to travel from very distant points in space.
So
within,
I had a question.
A matter of moments.
So
I'd love to answer that question, but I probably can't.
I'm looking at this as wormholes.
Sure.
And when they show the folding of space,
they kind of create a wormhole.
You see like circles.
They almost fart a wormhole.
Yeah, it was
and then they kind of
weird.
breathe a different. It's creepy and crazy.
It's super weird. Are they creating the wormhole, or are they finding a wormhole?
I think they've got to be creating.
Are they creating it? Okay.
But I'm no astrophysicist, so
I was just curious, like what the power, the evolution of spice, like creates.
For the Spacing Guild, it creates guild navigators who can fold space. That's all they ever refer to it as.
Yeah.
Folding space. So yeah, wormhole, that's a pretty good way to look at it, And basically they can, just float out there, do their thing, and then a ship that was, hanging out by one planet just kind of disappears and reappears at its destination planet. Quick and painless, it would seem. Now, the other major sort of not quite governing body, but certainly influential body is the Bene Gesserit witches, right? Now, they use the spice to basically help shape their minds so that they can do things like read the truth in what somebody is saying. They can sort of use voice commands. They can just sort of like alter their voice, tell somebody to do something, and that person basically just does it. It's a little like the Force, These are not the droids you're looking for, that sort of thing.
They're sort of portrayed as like priestesses.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, the first one we meet is the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam, who is the Bene Gesserit advisor to the Emperor of the entire universe, right?
Yeah.
So where the movie starts is the Emperor is talking to his, kind of, right?
Well, no, it's just that, like, this is an example of why I did not dig this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, Bo.
It's all,
Bo.
It's all exposition, right? So,
there's
like,
a lot to discuss.
We hear all this stuff.
Yeah.
And,
there's a lot of
all these
monologue.
names and races and things. It's like, where Star Wars does it right?
Sure.
Is that they use a lot of verbiage that is understandable already to our language.
Yes, they're not using Bene Gesserit, Kwisatz Haderach.
Jedi is kind of the first thing you hear that's a little, or that you read that is not clear.
Sure.
But everything else is like Lord Vader. Like you understand his
Admiral,
place in this.
Grand Admiral.
Yeah.
Still not sure what a Grand Moff is exactly, but whatever. I get you.
So I just thought that was
Princess Leia.
But we get we get told a lot of information rather
You're not
than
wrong.
shown.
You're not wrong. If you're a fan of the book out there, you know that reading that book is pretty difficult. The book has its own glossary of terms in the back, which you get to flip to a lot while you read. I think it took me about 5 times seeing the word ornithopter and flipping back and looking it up and looking it up again and looking it up again before I realized, ornithopter is basically their helicopter. It's that weird gold flying thing. Mm-hmm. All right, so the movie starts with Princess Irulan, the beautiful Virginia Madsen, in a big full-screen close-up talking about how it's the year 10191. Here's what's going on. There's the Harkonnens on planet Giedi Prime. There's the Atreides family on planet Caladan. And there's the Emperor of the whole galaxy on planet Kaitan.
Yep.
So, cut to the Emperor and his Bene Gesserit witch. They're about to have a meeting with the Spacing Guild.
Yep.
Spacing Guild come into the Emperor's chamber. The witch goes off to hide so that she can listen for the truth in what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Spacing Guild walks in with this great big weird crazy tank.
It looks kind of like a train.
It's like a big train car, but then the walls of it kind of fold back. Oh, hey buddy.
There's Walt.
Walt hates train cars. Oh.
Hey, buddy. Come here.
Gonna hand him to you. Careful.
All right. Don't bark into the mic.
He's doing a great job. Oh, he's such a cutie.
Yeah,
So,
cute.
inside this weird train car thing is this big, crazy thing that looks like a fish, but with like a huge human brain growing out of its face. And that is the Guild Navigator, right?
Right.
It's a horror show. And it's telling the Emperor, yo, Emperor, we control space travel. You want to be Emperor of the known universe, you got to go through us, because we control the space travel. So here's what's up, dog. We know that you are conspiring with the bad guys, the Harkonnens, to let the Atreides family take over the mining of the ever-important spice, right? Which is basically our petroleum oil, if you know what I mean, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
The Spacing Guild is saying, we know you're working together with the Harkonnens to let the Atreides take over the spice mining, and then you're going to betray them. And as soon as they've taken over the spice mining, you're going to help the Harkonnens kill off all the Atreides and just take over the spice mining all over again, even though they've been in charge of it for the last, however many years.
Right.
It's very strange. But the Emperor is agreeing to do this because he believes that the leader of the Atreides family, Duke Leto Atreides, played by Jürgen Prochnow, he believes Duke Leto basically could overthrow himself, the Emperor. He believes Duke Leto is so beloved and so popular that he could very well become the next Emperor of the galaxy. And what Emperor wants that? Oh, gosh. All right, so then... Whee!
Passing the dog back and forth.
Oh, yeah. It's like a game of football, but with a cute dog. So then the Guild Navigator says, also, check it out, Emperor. You have to kill Duke Leto's son, Paul Atreides.
Right.
And the Emperor's like, certainly, Paul's a boy. Certainly you're talking about the Duke himself. You want me to kill the Duke? And the Guild Navigator's like, no. I'm talking about the boy, Paul Atreides. You got to have him killed because he's a threat to us. And then he goes on to say, I never said this. We were never here. And all those guys, they scurry out of the room. And as they back out of the room, it's funny because some of them just have like shop vacs and they're just sort of mopping up the water that I guess was created from, I don't know, sliding this great big fish tank around. It's pretty funny. Those guys were actually wearing old body bags, which had been discovered in some location that they went to use for a set. They
Weird.
discovered these body bags that this is according to IMDb trivia, that had been created in like the 20s for this weird building that they happened upon. And they're pretty sure some of them had indeed been used to store a dead body or two in their day. So, David Lynch, right? Hey, we found all these body bags here. Let's make Guild Navigator costumes out of them. Mm-hmm. Pretty scary stuff. So, the Reverend Mother comes back to the Emperor, and she's like, yo, if those guys want Paul Atreides killed, I better go check him out, because his mother is one of me. She's one of these Bene Gesserit witches, right? And, they're a major royal family. You don't just kill the son of a major royal family without doing your due diligence, right?
Yeah.
So she travels to Caladan. She confronts Paul's mother because Paul's mother was supposed to have a daughter. She had been ordered by these witches to give this Duke Atreides a daughter so that daughter could marry one of the bad guys' kids and they could have, a peaceful future between these two warring families.
Right.
But the Lady Jessica, she's like, yo, I loved the Duke too much, man. He wanted a son. I love him so much I gave him a son. They can manipulate their, not quite their genetics, but they can, what the Bene Gesserits do is they get pregnant and they get to determine if it's going to be a boy or a girl.
Right.
It's pretty wild stuff. They can sort of, make sure. Transmute it? I don't know if that's the word. Transmogrify? Maybe? I don't know. But she betrayed her sisterhood. She gave in to love, and she gave the Duke a son named Paul, played by Kyle MacLachlan.
Yay.
So, we see Paul. First, he's studying up on the planets. He's studying up on Dune because his whole family's about to move there. Who enters the room? Thufir Hawat, Dr. Yue, whose first name I can never remember. Wellington Yue? I don't know. Yeah. Played by Dean Stockwell, right? Thufir Hawat was played by English actor Freddie Jones. Always funny. And then the one and only Patrick Stewart as Gurney Halleck, who is basically Paul's self-defense teacher, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So
Still
he's
doesn't have hair.
Still doesn't have hair. Even in 1984, he kept that dome sleek, chic, and shaved to the skin.
Well, later in the film, he has hair.
He sort of does.
He has the ring.
Yeah, he grows
hair ring.
He grows his ring out. It's pretty cool.
He's got like a skullet.
Yeah. But, so what do? So they tell Paul, they're like, yeah, you're doing fine with your studies, but, it's time for combat training right now.
Yeah.
And they bring out this weird robot. Paul straps this weird thing around his neck and puts this gun on his hand called a weirding module, right?
Yeah.
What does the weirding module do, Wes?
It amplifies your voice into a weapon.
It turns sound into a weapon.
Yeah.
So Paul's dancing around the thing and jumping and diving and rolling and shooting up this killer robot that's coming after him. It's pretty cool. And then, Patrick Stewart's like, now it's going to be you and me, man. We're going to have a knife fight with our shields. And they put on these weird...
Jello cubes.
Force field things that make it look like they're sort of walking around in a very stiff Jello cube.
Do you remember
They have a knife fight, and it's pretty sexy.
Do you remember? You saw Interstellar, right?
I did, yes.
Do you remember the little robot that walks around with them?
Yeah.
It looks like a rectangle.
Yeah.
That's what they look like to me.
Yeah, what'd they name that robot?
I don't remember.
I forget. But yeah, it was funny. One thing I really liked about Interstellar, this may be a spoiler, so maybe I won't say it.
Maybe not.
I won't say it. All right. But yeah, I enjoyed that robot because it seems so very simplistic and crude. And then as the movie goes on, you see it's actually very capable of doing a lot more things.
But like when you see it move around in Interstellar, it's just a bunch of rectangles.
Yeah. And it's sort of like at first it's kind of almost walking like it's on crutches.
Yeah.
But then in that scene where it has to run, it kind of turns itself into a wheel, which is pretty awesome.
So they when they turn into those force field, they put the force field cubes on.
It was a lot like
it was very rectangular blocks. But they were like orange or yellow, like see-through, so they're kind of like they were in Jello. And they like distorted the image, kind of like the way a fish tank might. Yeah. Well, a real trippy look to that there scene. But Paul and his and his master of self-defense, they have a fight, and Paul gets the drop on him. Kind of. But then Gurney's like, "Yo, check it out, dude. My blade's right at your stomach, bro. We would have joined each other in death," as he says. Yeah. So then Paul's like, "Yo, you dudes are being way too serious, man. Everybody needs to chill." So then the Bene Gesserit witch comes while Paul's asleep, and she puts him through this test. Do you remember the name of the test? I don't.
It was called the Gom Jabbar.
Okay.
She says,
I remember thinking Kareem Abdul.
Right. Yeah. Right. Now, I looked up some of the words. I didn't look up Gom Jabbar, but a lot of the other words are based in like Hebrew and stuff.
Like Muad'Dib.
Muad'Dib. The Kwisatz Haderach, I found out, is actually based in Hebrew. We'll get to that in a moment. Well, we'll get to it now.
It sounds very biblical.
Yeah, because basically, this Bene Gesserit witch, she thinks that part of the reason why Lady Jessica gave birth to a son, Paul, was because she was trying to give birth to this legendary super being, the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, the prophecy.
I looked it up. It's got a meaning in Hebrew. I can't remember exactly what that is. I could probably find out if I look at it. You want to look it up while I tell the story?
Kwisatz
Haderach. It's like Kwisatz or something like that. She's like, who do you think you are that you could possibly give birth to this super being, the Kwisatz Haderach, who would basically be a male Bene Gesserit witch and be even more powerful than all the Bene Gesserit witches, right? And Lady Jessica's like, whatever, I love my husband. I wanted him to have a son. We had a son. So the witch is like, all right, check it out, Paul. I got this needle at your neck, and it's poisonous. You're going to stick your hand in this box that I'm holding, and I'm going to make you think that you're experiencing excruciating pain. But if you're a human, you'll be able to overcome that pain within your mind, and you won't feel the need to pull your hand out of the box. If you pull your hand out of the box, I'm going to stick you with this thing in your neck, and you're going to die from poison. Right? That's a pretty intense test, you know what I mean? Right. The kid was just having a nap, and now here's this lady being like, yo, hey, how was your nap? Cool. I'm going to poison you to death if you take your hand out of this funny box. So Paul, thankfully, he manages to withstand the pain. He finds out that his hand wasn't really burning on fire, and that it was just a trick on his brain, and he is indeed human because he was able to convince himself that the pain wasn't real, withstand it, and she even tells him, like, no female witch of mine has ever, withstood that much pain. How fun is that? So Paul's like, "Ooh, boy, ooh." But he's also heard the witch say that she knows of a threat against Paul and his mom and his father.
Yeah.
But she can't guarantee that his father is going to survive the threat.
They basically have that conversation while he's asleep in the room.
Right.
But he's not really asleep.
Listening.
And she's like, "Oh, you're awake, aren't you?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah, he's doing that half squint thing where he's like kind of got his eyes open, but he's trying to look asleep.
But it's weird that they were like having this conversation.
They say a lot in front of
In
a
the room.
sleeping
Yeah.
boy.
At least they said it out loud.
At least they said it out loud. Did you find the definition for Kwisatz Haderach?
I didn't, because every result I'm coming up with is Dune related.
You'll find it.
Oh wait,
guess
Kwisatz
what?
Haderach and wait, hold on. I might have just found. Oh no.
Will you read that and make sure that it's the right thing? And then I'll keep telling this story because there's so very much of it. So, gosh, where are we? All right, so Paul goes and talks to his dad. You know, they're looking at the beautiful oceans of Caladan, and his dad's talking about, son, you know, there comes a time when, you know, blah, 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 whatever, the sleeper must awaken. Remember that, son. And he's basically kind of referring to his own thing where, sure, he's Duke of this planet Caladan, and he's a royal family guy, and that's all fine and good. But by traveling to Dune and overseeing the spice mining for a while, it's going to make them much more powerful, much more rich, right? So in a way, Duke Leto is like, oh, this is me stepping forward. This is me stepping up and gaining even more power than I have. And one day, son, you are going to do the same thing. And boy, oh boy, is he right. But he has no idea in which capacity Paul is about to do that. So he tells him, the sleeper must awaken. And Paul really takes that sentence to heart. Good Lord. There's so much more to go.
We're like 10 minutes into the movie.
Not quite 10, but maybe only 15. All right, and I'm doing the broad strokes here, folks.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can't seem to find. It's like if I look at the like shortened version on Google, it kind of gives me, but I can't find it in the page. But basically, it means the leap of the way.
That's what it is.
By means of which an initiate may travel some distance, and it's ... Again, ellipsis here. And when I go to the page, it doesn't. I can't find that sentence. So,
Oh, fiddlesticks.
So yeah, but that makes sense if we're talking about folding space.
Yeah.
And, leading people.
Right. And basically the way is like what these Bene Gesserits have been doing. Oh, we've done it this way all this time. But one day a male is going to come along who's going to leap us forward. That's sort of the thing. That's sort of what I got when I read the definition that I found, which I can't find again. Isn't that fun? Yo, dog. They travel to the planet Dune.
Right.
To finally move into the main palace there and take over the spice mining operation.
Yeah. They introduce some characters, too. They introduce his buddy.
Duncan, Idaho?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his buddy's like, I'm going ahead of you. I'll meet you there. And then
Right.
when he gets there, like 10 minutes later in the film, he sees him again.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, you're not wrong.
time passage is a little unclear in the film.
It's extremely unclear.
Until the end of the film. Then you're like, oh, okay, this much time has gone by.
Yeah, at one point they say, like, it's now been 2 years that Paul's been running around.
Yeah.
I
Well,
get you there.
You see a kid age as well.
That's true. We'll get to that in a moment. Or 10.
Not in a moment.
In 10 moments. All right. So, we're introduced to this character, Duncan, Idaho, who's like an Atreides family, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Consigliere, almost. He's like,
He's like...
he's really high up within their family's sort of
He's like a knight.
business. Kind of like a knight.
He's like a knight.
That's absolutely correct. So he goes ahead to Dune to investigate these people called the Fremen. They're basically the native dwellers of Dune. They live in the desert. Hardly anybody ever sees them.
They have blue eyes.
They have blue on blue eyes.
Yeah, it's like
blue
glowing.
within blue. And that's because they live on the planet where the spice is just floating around in the air. Like, it's just so intense there that by being born into it and living with it so intensely, it starts to transform their eyes blue
It's kinda
within
like,
blue.
Weed smokers and their eyes turning red.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. You know what they should have done was shown more shots of, like, the Fremen in total darkness. Would their eyes have actually glowed just out against the darkness? I don't know. They never showed it.
No.
They should have showed us. Boy, oh boy, what goes on? They get to Dune. They set up their house. They set up these big, shields around their house to protect them.
Another Jello cube.
Another Jello cube. Yep. And then they start finding out that, the Harkonnens, the bad guys, the family that previously lived there, left behind a bunch of suicide troops to constantly try to undermine the mining operations.
Have we met the Baron yet?
Yeah, we have, but I haven't introduced him.
Okay.
So right before they travel to Dune, we meet the bad guys. The Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, who's a great, big, fat, gross guy. He's got these disgusting boils on his face.
Yeah, so I had a question about it, because there's a guy tending to his face.
Yeah,
with a
doctor.
needle thing.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how glorious and special his sickness is.
Yeah.
As if they revered the sickness. So was he treating him, or was he giving him the disease? Was he injecting like mold and stuff into him, or was he, do you know?
I honestly don't know. I think he's treating him, but just sort of kissing his butt by saying even with your disease, you're still so magnificent.
I almost got the feeling that
it's
like
super gross.
I almost got the feeling that like he wanted, like, I don't know, like that he wanted to have the deformity.
Like the doctor did, or like
no,
the Baron wanted?
The Baron.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that.
Because he was really weird and twisted, and like
he's just so gross. There's the scene where he floats under the stuff that looks like motor oil just dripping down over him. And
it's that scene, right?
Yeah,
it's the same scene.
It's basically the Harkonnens are just super gross. Now, while doing some digging on this, apparently Dune was regarded as like the most homophobic movie ever. Which I find very interesting because
Sting's presence is very homoerotic.
Extremely. But also, I mean, I never really noticed it as a kid. I was just like, oh, that's the Baron. He's gross. Like, there you have it. But there is a scene where he essentially kills and then
the young boy
rapes the body of a flower boy. And so apparently, I guess back when it came out, a lot of people were saying like, well, here's this guy, he's homosexual. He's got these lesions on his face, like maybe he's afflicted with AIDS, and then of course they're the bad guys, and of course they're murderous monsters and all that. And I'm like, wow, that's I never really saw it that way. No. I just thought it was, well, there's the Baron, he's gross and he's evil,
Yeah.
I never bothered to tie his homosexuality to it. In the movie, they don't even make it clear that he rapes the kid. They just make it like, oh, he floats over, kills him, and just kind of strangles some blood out of him because he's a monster.
Yeah, I saw him as more like almost vampiric.
Yeah,
he seems very much like you see like old Roman emperors that are just like gluttons and
he just wants it all,
full of
and he's just like, eat whatever I want to eat, kill whoever I want to kill, that sort of thing. So the Baron, we meet him. He's totes nasty. He's got these two nephews, the Beast Raban and Fade Routha.
Sting.
Played by Sting. Good old Gordon Sumner of the Police.
Big old...
Don't stand so close to Raban.
Every time he was on screen, I was like, yup.
Yeah, I remember that was a funny one. He was like...
Every time.
Raban! You don't have to put on your red hair. Because they all have kind of reddish orange hair.
Yeah, orange hair.
Earlier yesterday, somebody had sent out a picture of the Donald Trump Make America Great Again hat.
Yeah.
But it says Make America Harkonnen because he's got that kind of orange Harkonnen hair. I need a sip of my ice, too.
Yeah. They also introduced... Was it in the scene that they introduced Brad Dourif's character?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Who's sort of like a little... like a minion.
Well, here's what you got to know about Brad Dourif's character and Freddie Jones's character.
Which one's Freddie Jones?
Freddie Jones is Thufir Howell with the big bushy eyebrows,
okay.
and the red stains around the
They're both the same race then, right?
Not quite race, but they are, much like the Bene Gesserits and then the Spacing Guild, they are what's known as Mentats. The Mentats are essentially human computers. And I always thought the Mentats were some of the coolest ideas within Dune. Basically, it's that mankind, having been enslaved by computers and then gone and destroyed all thinking machines, then created humans who would be born, and if they want, they can become a Mentat. And they basically start training their brain to just be like supremely logical thinkers, right?
Yeah.
So they're basically the human computers. Like, you remember there's that scene with Freddie Jones where that light flashing in his face, and then he goes and says that weird long thing, and it's almost like having to write out code, right?
Sure.
So the Mentats are human computers. Each royal family has their own Mentat. So we meet Peter de Vries, whatever you want to call him, played by Brad Dourif, and he's doing that thing about it is by the juice of snafu. No, it is by my will alone I set my mind in motion. It is by the juice of snafu that thoughts acquire speed, the lips acquire stains, the stains become a warning. It is by the juice of snafu I set my mind in motion. I mean, you didn't think I had that memorized, did you, Wes?
I'm not at all surprised, actually, that you have that memorized.
I don't know if anything about the juice or the stained lips is in the book. I honestly don't remember. I haven't read the book in quite a few years.
I feel like I did not really do any research, but I feel like I read that the bushy eyebrows weren't, but the lips maybe were.
I've got a thing here from a website called therobotsvoice.com. It's a list of 10 differences between book and movie about Dune. The very first thing is the Mentats' eyebrows.
There you go.
Let's see what it says. Why? Mentats already have an in-canon distinctive feature, the red stains on their lips. Okay, so that is in the book. The red stains on their lips that make them look like they were putting on lipstick while driving over gravel. This comes from drinking Sappho, a mental stimulant drink. He says, what's a Mentat? A human computer. Okay, so we've just been over that. So yeah, I guess having the Mentats have those crazy eyebrows was unnecessary, but it's fun. They look like,
yeah, I'm fine with it.
It's just a fun look for those Mentats. Brad Dourif comes along and he says to the Baron, yo, dude, Duke Atreides wants you to know that Canly is still going to happen. Now, what Canly is basically a war of assassins. Mm-hmm. So it's not, I'm sending my army over to kill your guys. You better get your army ready. It's, I'm going to send an assassin to try to kill you. Hope you have an assassin who can sniff him out before he gets to you, and you're probably sending assassins over to kill me, right?
Yeah.
That's what's been going on between these two families. So now the Atreides arrive on Dune, and there's been bunches of assassins left behind to try to kill Paul and Duke Leto and Lady Jessica, all so that the Harkonnens can just move right back into Dune and take over the spice mining again and be jerks.
So when Paul and the Duke get there,
yeah,
they meet up with a dude who's been there a long time, but he's not a Fremen.
Dr. Kynes, played by Max von Sydow.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they get in a copter thing.
An ornithopter.
An ornithopter.
Yeah, helicopter. Just say
sure.
Helicopter.
They get in a flying thing.
Yeah.
and they're going around, and they warn like a mining crew.
Yes.
About the worm, and they ask who's on the thing, and the Duke or somebody says, don't say who's on here.
Right.
Because of the assassin.
Because they're just assassins all over the place.
Oh, jeez, I hit my mic.
And, it's pretty much just agreed upon that they're going to be finding assassins from day one, and hopefully they'll be able to catch them before the assassins get the drop on the Atreides family.
Right.
So, yeah, what happens? Yeah, we can jump right to that. So Dr. Kynes is the Atreides family planetologist. And basically, he's gone ahead years and years ago to start living with the Fremen and understanding, what is it about these Fremen, these desert dwellers, that make them want to stay on a desert planet, that, make them be able to live separately from the royal families and all that sort of thing.
Right.
And it's important to also know that, of course, when the Harkonnen were there, they treated the Fremen like absolute garbage because they're the Harkonnen. They're jerks, right?
Yep.
So they meet Dr. Kynes. He helps them put on their still suits, which are these real cool-looking suits that apparently were very uncomfortable.
Yep.
And he points out that Paul has somehow put his still suit on, quote-unquote, desert fashion. And Paul says, well, it just seemed like the right way to do it.
Yep.
And Dr. Kynes, in his inner monologue, says, he will know your ways as if born to them.
So let's address the inner monologue.
Yes.
It's something I hated about the film. Everybody talks to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And they all whisper.
Yeah, and there's a ton of it in the book. There's a ton of inner monologue in the book. It's all written in italics.
But does it A, have to be a whisper, and B, do we have to have that? Like, it's just like... And half the time, they're whispering to themselves about something we already know in the film.
Or to explain something
that doesn't need to be explained.
That barely needs to be explained.
Or doesn't need to be explained. So
like Poison Blade
doesn't need to be explained. No.
Sort of.
So there's a moment.
Yeah, where a guy stabs another guy.
And the guy dies.
In the side, and the guy just dies instantly.
Who cares? He dies. It doesn't matter. Like, we've seen people get stabbed and they die in movies for decades. So it would have been fine to just know that he stabbed the guy and he killed him.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't even the important part. The important part is why he killed him. We'll come back to that scene in a little bit, but then we hear Paul in his inner monologue go, "The blade was poison." And I'm just like, who cares? Like, the movie is full of that.
I can only assume that what they did was they made this movie, and then when they ran test screenings for darn near every question that somebody wrote down on a test screening, why did this happen like this? They just said, you know what? Let's just record a bunch of ADR inner monologues and answer all those questions. I can only assume, because there's so much of it. There's so much of it. I'm not disagreeing with
you. A lot of information is delivered through
whispered inner monologue.
Yeah, it just is not needed.
It's nutty, man. It's a nutty, nutty movie. It's a nutty movie that you're going to grow to love.
It's like, I don't know about that.
All right, man. Broad strokes. You ready?
You've not painted in broad strokes yet.
We're still broad stroking, bro. All right.
We are not 20 minutes into this film yet, I don't think.
They meet Dr. Kynes, played by Max von Sydow, and he is going to accompany Duke Leto and Paul and Patrick Stewart out on a mission in a flying machine to observe the spice mining machines, right? So they're flying out to this one where they know this one miner thing is. It's funny. It kind of looks like a weird bug. If like a bug and a tank had a baby. It's a pretty cool looking little thing.
Tank bug.
And they talk about how, basically what they do is they set these machines down. These machines just start digging up spice out of the ground.
Yep.
And that, of course, creates a rhythmic vibration.
Right.
Eventually, a sandworm is going to show up and try to eat that machine. Now, these sandworms are huge. They talk about how some of them are 450 meters long, right?
Mm-hmm.
So any rhythmic activity on the surface of the sand is going to attract a worm. The worm's just going to come right up underneath and swallow it. I like to think that there was a sandworm in Star Wars The Force Awakens when Finn goes to the crashed TIE fighter, and all of a sudden it just gets swallowed into the sand. That's what I like to think. And then it explodes. So they're flying along, and they're like, whoa! They can see signs on the surface of the sand that there is indeed a worm headed toward that thing.
Right.
So they call into the spice mining machine, and who's at the controls of the spice mining machine?
I don't
David Lynch.
Oh, that's right.
David Lynch himself is in there, and he's like, boy, hey, how's it going? I'm the guy in the spice mining machine. You say you got worm sign? And Dr. Kynes is like, yeah, dude, there's a worm coming your way. Where the heck is your carryall? And Lynch calls around, and all the spotters flying around in other machines are like, we don't see the carryall anywhere. The Harkonnens probably sabotaged the carryall. Because all the carryall has to do is fly over, scoop the machine up, and all the spice gets taken away and everybody's safe. Not today, dude. Today, that worm is coming for that machine, and the carryall is nowhere to be seen. So the Duke orders Dr. Kynes. What?
Oh, just you're a little hot on the.
Oh boy! Well, I'm so excited.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm so excited because this scene could be great. The Duke orders Dr. Kynes to land the ornithopter, and he's like, "Everybody, run! Get in here. We're gonna fly you away. I don't care about the spice. I don't care about the machine. I want to save your lives because you're my employees." So they all come running out. They fly away in the ornithopter, and they look out the window, and this giant worm mouth comes up out of the sand right underneath the machine and just sort of closes, and then there's an explosion as the machine explodes, and then the worm sinks back away. And Dr. Kynes probably has an inner monologue moment where he says, like, wow, this ruler values human life more than he values the spice and his machinery. That's pretty awesome. I like this guy.
You know what, though? To me, it seemed like that scene was not really about that. Like, the whole reason that scene was there was not really for that.
Whoa, what do you think it's for?
I thought it was about Paul.
Yeah?
Because he's never been there.
Right.
and he's put on the suit, and they address that they have the inner monologue, because when he puts the suit on, Max von Sydow has that inner monologue about the prophecy, about how he will come and will know the ways of the...
One will come, a voice from the outer world. Yeah,
know the ways of the
Fremen.
Of the Fremen, like he's one of them.
Right.
So Paul is the one who spots the worm, even though nobody else spots it.
That's true.
And he spots it and tells them where it is super accurately, because David Lynch says, his character says, well, that's a really accurate reading.
Right.
like, hey, this is something special. This is like a Luke using the Force.
That's a good call. Paul is using his desert power.
Yeah. And that's what I got out of that scene. Like, I felt like it was, however,
yeah,
I also felt like at the same time, like, the scene is specifically just for this one thing.
Oh, well, see, I feel like it was for two things.
All right.
It was showing the goodness of Duke Leto.
I could see your way.
It was showing his altruism, and it was showing Paul harnessing his desert power that he doesn't even know he has yet.
I can be swayed to your
yeah. So they save the guys. They fly back to the palace. While they were away, Lady Jessica has met the Shout-Out Mapes, who is a little Fremen woman who is going to be a servant within the house, played by, what is her name? Her name escapes me. She's on one of the big crime shows these days. She's been in so much cool stuff.
Still alive?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's on. Is it NCIS LA? Maybe.
No, really.
She's on one of those shows.
She's been in stuff forever.
Yeah. One of her first big roles was she played a man in some like mystery movie. But anyway, so she plays the Shout-Out Mapes.
She played a man?
She's going to be a house servant to the Atreides family.
Her name is Linda Hunt.
Linda Hunt. Yes, you've seen Linda Hunt. I mean, I know you have. I'm looking at you. But the people who are listening, if they've even seen Dune, they've seen Linda Hunt.
She, NCIS Los Angeles, by the way.
Booyah! That's exactly what I said.
Kindergarten Cop.
Kindergarten Cop.
I mean...
What's she, the principal, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Just trying to, like, scroll through here just to... Dragonfly.
Oh, cool.
Maverick.
Nice.
Ready to Wear.
Oh, pret-a-porter.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, she was Miss Schlowski in Kindergarten Cop.
Nice.
She-Devil. I remember her as She-Devil. Yeah. Popeye. Right. She was in Popeye.
Who's she in Popeye?
Mrs. Oxheart. His mother.
Oh, his mother. Yeah, it's me mother. All right. Stepping on the gas, my friend.
I don't believe it.
Shout-Out Mapes is like, Lady Jessica, I'm a Fremen and I work for you now. And like, I'm here to look out for your family. So, I'm cutting way forward because we have to. Paul's in his room at night.
Yeah.
And he hears this thing float into his room. It's called a hunter seeker. It's basically a big floating syringe full of poison. Somebody's operating it. They can sort of see through a camera in there, but they can't see all that well. And it's just floating around in the darkness, making a little bit of noise, trying to find Paul so it can kill him. And Paul's inner monologue is saying, oh crap, there's this thing. If I move, it's going to notice me and kill me. But if I call for help, whoever opens the door is going to get killed because it's just going to go for the movement.
Yeah.
And then poor Shout-Out Mapes opens the door. Maybe she's delivering fresh towels. I don't know. And the hunter seeker flies at her. Paul manages to catch it, slam it into the headboard of his bed, or maybe just the wall. No, it came out of the headboard of his bed. Extra scary because it was waiting in his own bed.
Yeah.
He slams it into the wall and breaks it, and the Shout-Out Mapes is like, yo, dog, you just saved my life. I'm a Fremen. I owe you a life debt. Like, you saved my life. I now have to make sure your life is always safe. So she tells him something about how there's a traitor. Right? There's a traitor within the House Atreides. Not only are there all these suicide troops hidden trying to kill you guys, but somebody higher up within the family ranks is literally betraying you dudes.
Yep.
So they send a search party out. They find a dead guy who was running the hunter seeker, probably poisoned himself to death. Obviously, he was a Harkonnen spy. Well, then, it doesn't take long before... what is it? Dr. Yue.
Yeah, the Duke.
Played by Dean Stockwell, is observing some dead bodies because they just keep finding all these Harkonnen spies. Mm-hmm. They kill themselves. As soon as their plan fails, they kill themselves. And they're just bringing them all these dead Harkonnens.
He's X-raying one.
And he's got this cool X-ray machine, and he slides the machine over this Harkonnen body, and he sees a little rolled up message like in the abdomen.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, there's my message.
Yeah, in his head probably.
And,
he says, there's the message.
There's my message from those jerks, the Harkonnens. And then somebody comes in and he slides it away and, everything's fine. So then Duke Leto is walking around in the middle of the night and he finds poor little shout-out Mapes dead on the floor. And he's like, what? Who the heck did this? And then what is it? He gets stabbed or something? And it's Dr. Yui.
Was it the little flying thing?
Maybe.
Might have been the little flying thing or something.
All I know is he gets injured and Dr. Yui's there. And he's like, Yui, what? You're betraying my family? And Dr. Yui's like, yo, check it out. I am betraying your family because the Harkonnens have my wife held hostage. And I swore that I would help kill you in order to get my wife back. Yeah. And I'm real sorry that, I betrayed your family. And he's got that diamond on his forehead. That's to signify that he's been put through, like, proper conditioning so that he could never betray whatever family he works for. But you hold the guy's wife hostage, he might overcome that.
It's kind of like, the line you don't have to wait in when, like, you fly on an airplane.
Yeah.
And some people don't have to wait in line because they've been pre-screened.
Right.
It's like that.
It's a little like that. It's basically saying Dr. Yui is totally safe because he's just a doctor and he's been literally programmed and conditioned to only take care of your family.
He's been brainwashed.
He's betraying them. Oh, how? But what does he do?
He says, look, you're going to die, but you're not going to die yet.
That's right. You're going to help me kill a man.
The Baron's going to be all, like, gloaty and get up in your face. He's going to get in your grill. And so I'm going to put a poison tooth.
He pulls the Duke's tooth right out of his face.
Yeah, with a really cool little device.
Yeah.
And he's like, he puts the tooth in. He's like, bite down on this and then breathe in his face, and you'll poison him with this gas. And then you'll kill him, and it'll be worth it.
That's right. And Yui says, because they got my wife, and darn it, I'm gonna kill these guys for what they put me through, and I'm sorry. But he also says, I'm gonna help make sure that your son Paul and your wife Lady Jessica are able to escape. Thank goodness, right? Boy, so not only was Yui waiting in the dark to kill Duke Leto, he was also completely powering down the house shields, right? The house shields go down. The Harkonnen attack. Hi! We've got new visitors here at View the Right Thing. The Harkonnen attack, and it's awful, man, because Yue powered down the shields. The Harkonnen can just get right in, and he also destroyed all the weirding modules, the thing that turned the guns that turn sound into violent energy bursts. So boy, oh boy, there's a big bloody battle. Duncan Idaho's got his shield on, but they send this weird drilly bullet, and it slowly penetrates through the shield, and it kills him in the head, and it's real sad. And then everybody's fighting, and Paul and Jessica get tied up and taken away.
Hold on.
What?
So Duncan Idaho gets killed.
I told you, man, broad strokes, baby.
So they set this, like, I know, but I want to talk about. I want to, like, be clear about what I was confused or didn't really get.
I almost feel like there's too much confusion to even try to clear these things.
And this one's not so much confusion, but like an example of why I didn't really dig the movie.
Yeah.
They introduce this character like he's important.
Duncan Idaho.
He shows up as soon as they get there.
Yeah.
As if, like, they sort of set up like he's going there years before or something, but really it's like a day before.
Yeah.
And then you don't hear or see Duncan Idaho again until he dies. Like, it's supposed to mean something to us.
Well, he comes back to tell the Duke that, these Fremen that everybody's so worried about aren't really just a tiny faction. They're actually possibly hundreds of thousands of them.
Couldn't that have been anybody? Like, couldn't that have been Max von Sydow's character who's been there so long that his eyes have turned blue?
Well, like, Duncan Idaho's very important in the book, and in the sequels to the book, there's, if I'm not mistaken, it's an android that comes along that is essentially a clone of Duncan Idaho. I forget if it's a clone or if it's an android, but basically Duncan Idaho returns to the family Atreides and becomes an even more important character. So it's sort of like, here he is, he was Paul's friend, he was a loyal soldier to the family. He gets killed here, but had we seen the sequels, we would have seen a lot more from Duncan Idaho. I can understand your frustration. I'm not saying they handled it correctly.
Viewsters, my eyes are rolling.
I'm just letting you know why he was there at all. Because he becomes a much bigger character to the bigger story of Dune.
So should they... You think they had an idea that they were going to make more
I
of these
think they were
movies?
expecting to make sequels. I even read some trivia saying that, like, you know, there was a lot of talk of the sequels, but then when the movie cost $42 million to make and only made $30 million at the box office, it was just like, that's it. That's a huge bomb. No sequels for Dune. What can you do, right?
Yeah.
What can you do? Duncan, Idaho gets killed. Wes is heartbroken because he loved that character so much.
Yep.
What happens? Baron Harkonnen is gloating over a tied-up Paul and a tied-up Jessica. He spits in Lady Jessica's eye, which is very gross. Especially, I don't know about especially.
It seems diseased. Like, it's like, ew, that's getting in your eyes.
And according to the books, he's actually like maybe a second cousin or like an uncle to her.
Yeah.
So it's kind of gross that he wants to do this really creepy, gross exchange of bodily fluids to his own niece.
Yeah.
It's real sick. But boy, oh boy, does he enjoy doing it. And so, you know, he's like, all right, take these two off and we'll deal with them later. Let's get the Duke in here and mess with him, right?
Yeah.
So Yue comes in with the Duke. The Duke's dying of his stab wound, but he's still alive. And Yue's like, all right, cool, man. So I betrayed this guy that I swore to protect. How about, you know, you hook me up with my wife now. I want to see her. And the Baron's like, oh, yeah, no problem. You're going to see your wife right now. And Peter, the Mentat, stabs Yue in the back, killing him. And Dr. Yue falls to the ground. And Dean Stockwell very beautifully says, you'd think I don't know what I've gained for my wife. And then he dies.
Yeah.
And poor Duke Leto is now alone, basically paralyzed, dying on a slab, and the Baron comes over to gloat in his face, but he moves away, and Peter, the Mentat, gets in his face, and the Duke Leto, you know, he's losing blood. He's tripping out. He looks at Peter's face, and he starts to see the Baron's face, and he says, remember, the tooth, and he bites his poison tooth.
He's in his head, his monologue, once again.
In his monologue, and he breathes the poison gas into Peter's face. And Brad Dourif has one of the best deaths, one of my favorite deaths ever, which is he inhales a bunch of the gas, and he just sort of gets up and staggers, and then he just goes, Gah! And falls over
He throws
dead.
his arms forward, too.
Yeah, dude.
It's super weird.
Like, it's such a great death. It's so simple. It's not overdone at all.
It's kind of like...
It's almost like you're expecting so much more, and then he's just, I'm dead! And he
it's kind of like
out of the scene.
When you see... a cartoon character in a Bugs Bunny cartoon, or like Pepe Le Pew, like all of a sudden like pretends to die, or the cat smells it and like all of a sudden just flips on its back with its legs straight out.
Right.
That's what that reminded me
of. It's
of.
a little bit like that, but it's just, I love that moment so much. It's just like, it's almost like for a second he's about to say like, maybe I'll be okay, and then it's just like, nope, and he's just dead. Yeah. I love that moment.
So the part with the tooth, again, it was another moment where it was like, we saw his point of view and saw that he thought he was seeing the Baron.
Yeah.
We didn't have to hear him go,
the tooth.
Oh, yeah. What did Yue say? The tooth.
Remember the tooth.
And, like, we didn't need that. And that's a really good example. And I think that's why this movie wasn't successful, is, like, it felt like it had to constantly hold our hands.
Yeah.
And it felt like it needed to inundate us with exposition. And again, going back to Star Wars, because Star Wars had just done 3 films just prior to this.
Right.
Star Wars built like all this goodwill and sort of like bridged the gap between sci-fi and fantasy and what like the average, like Star Trek was very technical, you know, and it was very scientific, and there was a reason why Trekkies at the time were viewed the way that they were.
Right.
And Star Wars sort of bridged that gap for people. And then here comes this movie, and it like undoes all the goodwill that Star Wars had done.
You know, according to trivia sites, Lynch turned down directing Return of the Jedi to direct Dune.
Well,
just let that sit with you for a minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that he would have gotten away with his David Lynchy ways, with
very
Return
true.
of the Jedi. Anyways, that's probably a good reason why he turned it down. He probably had no control.
Very true indeed. So he gave us Dune, and what a gift it is. Because where are we? We're in like the first 30 minutes of the movie.
I don't know.
I don't know. All right, broad strokes. So Duke Leto does not manage to kill the Baron as Dr. Yue had hoped. So the evil, filthy, gross Baron is still alive.
Yep.
And boy, oh boy, is he thrilled about it.
Yep.
So now he controls Arrakis all over again. It's been like a week since he gave up control of Arrakis, and now he's back, and he says, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the Beast Raban in power to oversee Arrakis, and he's going to squeeze these people and torture them and drive them crazy, and then just when they're thinking about revolting against Raban, he's going to send in beautiful Feyd-Rautha the Harkonnen as this sort of savior to come along and be like, oh, my cousin,
He's so silly.
he's a bad guy, but now I'm here to make everything good for you because I'm Feyd. And
Right.
they just sort of gloss over that idea because now it's time to follow Paul and his mother,
Who were captured.
who are captured, tied up, gagged so that they can't use their Bene Gesserit voice powers. But,
Well, she's gagged.
yeah, because they don't know that he has voice powers.
Yeah.
But Paul and Jessica, as they're laying there in this spaceship, which is probably taking them to the Baron Harkonnen's ship to go back to Giedi Prime, Jessica notices that there's a little diamond shape carved into something, and that's Yue's symbol saying, like, hey, I left something for you. So she's like, whoa, cool. Yue's trying to help us out from beyond the grave. So Paul uses the voice, and
she said, in her head goes,
he's
trying
trying the voice. Yeah. And basically, he says, undo my mother's gag. He does. She tells the one bad guy Harkonnen to stab the pilot to death, and he does with a poison blade.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, with that
Paul,
inner monologue.
Paul notices it and goes, a poison blade.
Also, you just kind of gloss over the fact that dude was fully going to rape his mother.
That's true. That's probably true. The Harkonnens are notorious rapists, and they're awful.
It was crazy.
They're pretty awful. They're totally awful. What am I saying? They're not even pretty awful. Yeah. They're totally awful.
So the pilot gets killed by the poison blade.
Pilot gets killed. Paul manages to get their restraints undone, and they manage to sort of crash land, kind of safely out in the desert. But they're just on this little piece of rock. They're sort of safe from worms, but they're not any place where they're safe from everything else, right?
Yeah.
Any Harkonnen ship could come along and scoop them up at any moment.
Yeah.
So they put on the still suits. In case you're not familiar, still suits are these suits that they wear that as they walk and breathe and sweat, it reclaims their body's moisture and turns it into drinkable water.
Super cool idea.
Even
their waist.
Even their waist. That's
Even their
true.
waist.
That's true.
But it's super cool, like this idea that it like separates the salt. He said, like the Max von Sydow's character,
right?
References that like it even like separates the salt from the water, so you can drink it. So you could basically be out in the worst part of the desert for days
and days.
You'd be fine
with a properly functioning still suit. You'll be totes fine, bro. So they put on these still suits, and they see a great big mountain in the distance, and they're like, we have got to get to that thing, and we have to walk without rhythm so we don't attract a sandworm. And boy, oh boy, do they attract a sandworm anyway.
Well, they tried it. They put this thing in the ground. A thumper.
Yes.
Which just is a rhythmic, like, thump, thump, thump,
right.
thump. So, and then they try to walk without rhythm, but they don't do that very well.
Right. The worm's supposed to go for the thumper, but no. It can tell something tasty and living is going that away. So it starts chasing them. Yeah. They run. They get to the mountain. They're hiding in a little crack in the mountain. The giant worm is like poking his face against the mountain, trying to eat them. Jessica talks about how it's so loud and it stinks probably. Oh, Paul mentions he can smell the spice, like just 100% spice is all they're breathing in.
When he makes this observation, the spice and the worms are the same.
Are they connected? Are they the same?
Yeah, we hear this monologue again.
Yeah.
And then the worm breaks part of the rock apart, and Paul falls.
Goes sliding down several crazy rock slides.
The most convenient fall that he could have had.
I know, because usually when you slide down the face of a mountain, you're not happy when you land. He landed just fine.
Only would have been more convenient if he had slidden into like a jetpack or like a parachute.
That's weird. I just had deja vu.
Yeah, that's weird.
That is weird.
Moving on. Maybe we'll find out.
Moving All right. So, so they're safe. And so, the worm buggers off.
They're safe, and the worm buggers off because there's another thumper.
Yes, somebody else put another thumper farther away. So the worm goes after that thumper. They're safe. They're on solid rock. They're going to be fine. But they go venturing further into the mountain, and all of a sudden, they're met by the Fremen. Stilgar.
Crazy Fremens.
Yes, led by Stilgar, played by...
the guy from Ed from Twin Peaks.
Ed from Twin Peaks. His name escapes me. He was also the pastor in the
Silver Bullet.
In Silver Bullet, one of my favorites.
I knew where you were going.
And also, he's also the main bad guy in The People Under the Stairs, right?
Everett McGill.
Everett McGill. How can I forget that?
Yeah.
Everett McGill.
Good old werewolfy McGill.
Yeah. So, he's there. He's leading this band of Fremen. Jessica gets the drop on him and gets him in a weird headlock, literally a weirding way headlock. Paul runs off, but he decks this dude. Now, they didn't address this in this version of the movie. In the extended version, that one guy jumps out at Paul, and Paul decks him. And then once, Stilgar is like, oh, hang on a minute. These people are strong. We should welcome them as one of us. The guy that Paul hit is like, yo, dude, this kid jacked me up. I demand satisfaction. I want him to have to fight me before we let him in.
This is the book?
This is in the book and the extended edition of the movie. And so, Stilgar's like, yeah, dude, you attacked this dude. He's my friend. He's in my tribe all my life. I gotta let him fight you if I'm gonna let you in. Paul has to kill that guy.
Cool.
But he doesn't. They don't show it in this movie.
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, he spares that dude's life. And then that guy's like, well, you're stronger than me, so I'm happy to have you on my side in a fight. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's cool how the Fremen do that. They recognize, like, whoa, wait a minute. These people are strong too. Let's make them our friends rather than our enemies. That's a smart way to do it. So
this movie's losing me again.
Now Paul and Jessica have been welcomed into a tribe of Fremen fighters, desert dwellers.
Yeah.
And now things are about to get crazy because they agree, hey, we'll teach you Fremen how to use the weirding way, how to use these weirding modules. Now you got totally new fighting styles and weapons on your side. We can defeat the Harkonnens.
Where did the weirding modules come from? Because they were destroyed by UA.
I have to assume they've figured out how to build new ones, I guess. That's
okay.
The only thing. That's the only thing it could be. They do not explain it at all in the movie, and they don't exist in the book at all.
And he meets Chani.
He meets Chani, played by Sean Young, who he's been dreaming about. He's been having dreams about this girl, Chani.
In fairness, he's also been dreaming about Sting's character.
He's also been dreaming about Fade Ralph the Harkonnen, played by Gordon Sumner, a.k.a. Sting. I was trying to think of another Police song that I could work into a pun about Dune, but nothing came to mind.
Yeah.
Walking on the dune, right? I hope my legs don't break.
So he's
walking on the dune.
Gonna lead these people and teach them the fighting weird ways.
Paul's like, yo, check it out, guys. We're the Fremen. We're the native people of Arrakis, Dune, the desert planet. The spice only originates here. If we're the natives and the spice only originates here, that means we should be controlling it. And the only way to control a thing is if you have the power to destroy a thing. So he's like, so what we're going to do is we are going to just wreak havoc on all the Harkonnen spice mining operations, and we are going to bring spice production to a standstill. Yeah. And then the Emperor himself will have to face us.
Well, and there's another part of their agreement of bringing them in to be a Fremen. And that's the
prophecy.
Well, his mom has to become the new priestess.
That's right. Their Reverend Mother is too old, and they need a new Reverend Mother, so they decide it's going to be Paul's mom.
And I only bring that up
because she's pregnant.
Well, the life water,
water of life,
is really important to the plot.
Wrong. Did the movie explain where the water of life comes from?
Nope.
All right. The water of life is basically water that's regurgitated from a baby sandworm when it's born.
Gross.
It's pretty gross, but it's very intense.
Which makes it explain why it's full of spice,
thing, right?
And it kills people.
You know what the spice basically is?
No.
Basically worm poop. It's basically the poop of giant sandworms being left in the ground as they mill around underground. And then we humans are mining it up and putting it in everything we consume.
Dude, man, people lick toads. I think people will do anything for a high.
There you have it, dude. There you have it. But yeah, that's basically what it boils down to. So God Almighty. So they just wreak havoc. They're at one point they're in a fight with some smugglers, and Paul discovers that Gurney Halleck, played by Patrick Stewart, is still alive.
He's got a badass skullet.
He's got a badass skullet, and he's like, "Oh my God, I thought you were dead." And Paul's like, "I thought you were dead."
They hug in the middle of a battle.
In the middle of a battle, and it's beautiful. So now Gurney's back in the mix. They train up, all these Fremen to be Weirding Way soldiers. They train up the Fedaykin, who are Paul's 15 sort of Secret Service guys. They put blood on their shoulders so that you recognize them. It's all cool.
And at this point, they explain that the guns, the weirding guns,
yes,
work with certain words.
Yes.
So you use your voice. It's not, you just don't go,
right.
You have to use certain words. And when they're training and learning, we didn't address his name.
Oh, boy.
He had to take on it.
So much.
He had to become part of the tribe. They would have a name that he would be known by out to all of the people, and then a name that they would use out in the open, so they wouldn't necessarily, so they could, I don't know. Yeah,
so his name within the tribe is Usul, meaning the strength at the base of a pillar, and then his name that the rest of the world will know him as is Paul Muad'Dib, which is the name for the tiny desert jumping mouse that populates Dune. And there's 2 moons of Dune. One of them has a funny crater on it that's shaped kind of like one of those little mice.
Yeah.
So Paul's like, I want to be named after that funny little mouse on the moon.
Muad'Dib.
And the guy says that will be Muad'Dib. And also, as part of the prophecy, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they refer to one will come, the voice from the outworld, he will be the Mahdi, right? Sounds a lot like Muad'Dib.
And voice is important, obviously.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, he chose to be called this thing that sounds a lot like Mahdi, Muad'Dib.
Yeah.
Closer and closer to the prophecy.
So
you look so annoyed right now.
This whole thing is
there's just so much.
So they're learning to use the words.
Yes.
And some guy is just like, Muad'Dib, and it
well, he's literally trying to address Paul.
Yeah.
He's trying to say, hey, Muad'Dib.
Oh, I thought he was just testing the gun out with the name.
No, but then he notices his gun starts to react to it.
I mean, it's super, super powerful, and they realize his name is like a killing word. Yeah. It's like the Avada Kedavra.
You said it out loud.
Yeah, the killing curse.
What if I had dropped dead when you said that just now?
I mean, I would have felt a little bit bad.
You would have, but you know what? It would have gotten me out of doing my tapes tonight.
I would have blamed J.K. Rowling.
Oh, my gosh.
Lawsuit.
I believe it, dude.
Yeah.
I would want you to sue.
So...
Oh, boy.
He remembers
so Paul Muad'Dib is leading the Fremen.
He remembers the spice and the worms are the same thing.
Yes.
So they go out and they're like, we gotta catch those worms.
Well, part of the Fremen sort of manly rites of passage is you have to learn to ride a worm.
But he says, if I can't control the worm, we can't fight this fight, basically.
Yeah. Because that's just part of the Fremen tradition. You have to go out, you have to learn how to ride Shai Hulud.
So he takes what looks like a shovel.
A maker hook.
Yeah, and he stabs a worm.
Yeah.
And he gets on top of it and he rides it.
Yeah, what it is they dig it in, and then the worm rolls so that it gets its new wound away from the grittiness of the sand. So that's how they get the worm to carry it up. So now they're on top of the worm, and then they throw ropes down to their buddies, and they ride the worms.
Yeah.
Do you know why it's called a maker hook?
No.
The Fremen call Shai Hulud, the sandworm, the maker, right?
Okay.
Remember when Dr. Kynes sees the worm attack the thing? It attacks the thing, and you hear Dr. Kynes say, bless the maker.
Oh, yeah.
Bless his comings and goings, and something like that. May his yada, yada, yada. So he does a little prayer, right, to the worm.
Yeah.
Or sort of to God on the worm's behalf.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. There's a lot in the books. There's a lot of Christianity. There's a whole religious sect known as Orange Catholic, and it's almost as if this is like a further book of the Bible, but 8,000 years in the future, right?
Right.
Weird, wild stuff, Wes. Paul learns to ride the worm. His mom takes the water of life. She becomes the new Reverend Mother. But what happens to her insides?
The baby also drinks the water.
She was pregnant with Duke Leto's unborn daughter. So when she drinks the water of life, so does the little baby. The little baby is born premature, but also kind of not premature. Basically matured early, right?
Yeah.
So the baby comes out, and it's like, boom, I'm 1 year old. Boom, I'm 2 years old. Boom, I'm 3 years old. But it just ages real fast, and she's born with all the wisdom and knowledge of a Reverend Mother. So here's this little child, a toddler, that's as smart and powerful as a high-up Bene Gesserit witch.
Right.
How intense is that? Played by
Alicia Witt.
Alicia Witt at maybe 4 years old. Tiny little kid running around, holding her knife.
That could
smiling.
not have been her voice in the movie.
No, I really don't think it was either. Boy, oh boy, there's still so much to go, but let's just get there. Let's plow forward.
So they fight and fight and fight.
They fight. They bring spice production to a standstill. The Emperor finally hears about this. He comes to Dune.
To bitch everyone out.
Yeah, he comes to complain to the Harkonnens. He kills the Beast Raban.
In his ultra gold ship.
That ship is so gold, baby. And it's basically like a spaceship that's also a palace. So the Emperor calls Baron Harkonnen over. Harkonnen comes in and he sees his nephew's head on a plate at the Emperor's feet. The Beast Raban has been beheaded by the Emperor. And he's like, "What up, Baron Harkonnen? Like, why'd you call me to Dune?" And the Baron's like, "Oh, I didn't call you." And he's like, "Well, guess what? Your foolish inactions and the Beast Raban's negligence over properly running this planet called me here. You're in big trouble. We're in big trouble. Who the heck is Muad'Dib? Everything is turning into an S show right now."
Yeah.
Paul and the Fremen. Paul has now also drank the water of life and basically become the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, so he realizes that he can't do this unless he drinks the...
Right. The sleeper must awaken.
Yeah, so he drinks the water, and then...
his eyes bleed. His mom and his sisters get big bloody noses.
Yep.
The Bene Gesserit, who works for the Emperor, falls on the floor with a big bloody nose because it's like he's shaking up the whole Bene Gesserit world right now.
And then all the worms are just like hanging out.
Yeah, the worms
looking at him.
Come up and they're like sort of...
so he can control the worms, basically.
Bowing to him, yeah. It's pretty cool. Oh my gosh, we're leaving out so much, but who cares?
But here's
it's a
the thing.
32-year-old movie.
But
yes.
here's the thing about leaving out so much. We're leaving out like half the movie, but half the movie is not important.
In a way, you're right.
And that's the thing about this movie that's just blows my mind.
In a way, we haven't even mentioned the pug.
The pug. Well, I was going to come back to the pug.
There's a delightful little pug.
I was going to talk about all the things I liked about the movie.
All right, cool. Well, then we will do that. All right, man. So Paul and the Fremen, they lead a full-on attack against the Emperor's palace ship. Right? They're riding on worms. They got crazy cannons on their chest. They're firing. They're blowing ships out.
They knock out these
the sky.
like sort of these walls that sort of like are protecting them from the worms and the sand.
Yeah.
And they knock out the walls and all the sand comes in.
Yeah, there's like a sand tidal wave.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. I wonder what shooting that was like.
It's probably a model.
Sandy.
Yeah, gritty.
Pretty sandy. Pretty gritty that day.
It was a gritty day.
Pretty dusty. Wear your goggles, folks.
So
they attack. Paul. Oh, Princess Alia gets taken captive. I put that in air quotes. And, you know, she's, or not Princess Alia, but little Saint Alia of the Knife, Paul's little sister,
the little girl,
gets taken captive. And, you know, the Emperor's Bene Gesserit is like, "Yeah, this thing's an abomination. You need to kill her." And she's like, "Oh, but I'm the daughter of Duke Leto. Like, I'm royalty, bro. You can't kill me." And the Emperor's like, "Oh, crud. What is this?" So she's like,
"I got a message for you, right?
I got a message for you, yo. My brother's coming, and he's about to blow this place up."
He's pissed off.
He's so mad, and he's got powers, fool. And then she kills the Baron Harkonnen, which is awesome.
Yeah.
She rips out his creepy, gross plugs in his chest.
Yeah.
And then he goes spinning off and floats out and goes right into the mouth of a worm.
Yep.
And that part's pretty great. Because that guy needed to die, like, in the first act.
Yeah.
And then it just cuts to Alia standing outside in the middle of the battle. Little 4-year-old girl holding a great big knife and just smiling as the wind blows and a battle ranges around her. It's terrifying.
It's the most like out of place shot in the entire thing. It almost doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the music of Toto, they've brought in some electric guitars now, and everything's just shredding up.
Yeah.
It's great. The battle rages on.
Yep.
Now, the Fremen, they manage to kill a whole bunch of the enemy troops, and they round everybody up, and they take them into what was the Atreides family palace there on Dune, right?
Yep.
They take them out of the Emperor's ship into the proper palace of the controlling family of Dune. And Paul's like, "All right, you know, you're the Emperor. We got your troops here. There's the Spacing Guild. The Spacing Guild is like, yo, let this fool talk, because we need this spice." They basically only eat spice. They're like, we're running out of our main thing that's going to
Yeah.
turn us into navigators. You better let this fool talk, or he's going to bring space travel to a standstill. The Emperor's like, all right, what's up? And Paul notices that Fade Routha Harkonnen is still alive
Yeah.
and standing right there in the group. And he's like, yo, we vowed to kill every Harkonnen on this planet, and there's one still in there. Give him a knife and have him come out here and fight me. And the Emperor's like, well, if he wants, he can use my knife. So he gives him his small gold knife.
Yeah.
Paul's got his cool, I forget what they're called. Chris knives? I forget what they're called. But basically what they don't explain is that the knives the Fremen use, those real cool white,
Sure.
sexy knives, are made from the worm's teeth.
Okay.
Whenever they find a dead
Yeah,
worm,
looks like a bone, yeah.
they make all those awesome knives out of it. Paul's like, cool. They have a crazy knife fight. Sting's jumping around, talking about how he's going to kill Paul. Paul manages, he almost gets a drop on him. And Paul says, I will bend like a reed in the wind. And he, boom, judo flips Sting and shoves his knife up through Sting's jaw.
I was a little skeptical of that because Sting actually had an extra knife pop out of his
he had a
side.
secret sabotage knife pop out
and
of
then
his
you
thing.
hear, poison knife.
Yeah, another one of those.
And then he
Poison
flips
blade.
them over. They're really like up against each other, and they flip over on top of each other. And I was like, how did he not get cut by the poison blade? They don't show that. They don't say that.
Here's
it just
what's up.
doesn't happen.
You're asking that question in a movie about a society that turns men into weird space fish that can create wormholes.
Yeah, but
You just got to willingly suspend disbelief.
no, because they made a point of addressing that
Oh,
the
I
other guy,
understand.
like we see a guy get killed with a knife, and then we have to hear the monologue about, it was a poison knife. They go to the point
I
of
hear you loud and
explaining
clear.
every little thing. They don't explain how he
and then
manages
he
to
just
not get cut.
he just slinks around it.
That knife just,
I hear you, bro.
he's touching the part of that guy's body where
I
the
hear
knife
you.
was. Yeah.
I hear you loud and clear, man.
Yeah.
I didn't direct it. I didn't even write it. I only barely enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy it, but for all the wrong reasons. Paul kills Fade Routha Harkonnen with a knife up through his chin.
Yeah, that's
and
pretty
then he shouts at him, and Fade Routha's chest bursts open, and the whole
The
ground
ground
around him
cracks.
cracks.
Coolest part of the movie.
Coolest part of the movie. And one of the Fremen, not that special guest Fremen, which we'll get into in just a second,
Okay.
but one of the Fremen says, Muad'Dib doesn't even need the weirding module anymore.
Yeah.
He can kill with a word.
Yeah.
And then, well, before that, somebody said, forget it. So, this is a much different, well, a pretty different ending from the book, because then these Fremen priests come in and they put a robe, a big fancy sort of kingly robe around Paul, and then out of nowhere, what happens to the entire planet of Arrakis?
Starts raining.
Starts to rain.
Yeah, that's cool.
It is pretty cool, because one of the plans of the Fremen was they had stored all this water that they
Yeah, they were going
collected
to make
from the air,
the planet new again.
change the surface of Arrakis. Now, I don't think that's what's going on there. A lot of people think that Paul is essentially just like making it rain with his godlike powers in that moment.
Like a strip club.
I almost don't feel that that's even what's happening.
Yeah.
I feel sort of more like Jodorowsky's Dune, where he says that the planet itself decides to change. I feel like it's a little bit more of that. Like,
I think it's a combination of two things.
yeah.
I think it is Paul, and I think it is the planet. I think Paul is a part of the planet.
Oh, yeah.
I think when he drinks drinks the water, the life water,
Yeah.
and he's like been part of the spice for so been eating up that spice.
Yeah.
I think he's a part of the planet.
I
and
can
I
dig
think,
that.
I think he's like sentient with the planet.
I can understand that. Yeah. Because in future books, Paul indeed evolves into a worm, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe his son does, but I think Paul does.
Weird.
Maybe his son does. But yeah, basically, it's sort of like how they say dolphins and whales are man evolved. Maybe these worms evolved from an early form of man, right? Dude, so much to discuss. So
that
little
was
time.
the end of the movie, basically.
That's the end of Dune. It ends much differently from the book, because what happens in the book is Paul says, yo, check this out, Emperor. I'm going to marry your daughter. Chani's going to be my wife. We're going to make love and have children, but I'm going to marry your daughter, and your grandchildren are also going to be part Paul Atreides, fool. That's what you get for betraying my family.
He gets 2 wives?
Yeah.
It's weird.
So basically he keeps Chani as like a concubine and is in love with her, but he marries Princess Irulan to basically say like, hey, I'm the new emperor, basically. Like, I just brought spice to a standstill. Guess who has all the power? Paul Atreides and the Fremen of Dune. But in the movie, they just make it rain.
Yeah.
And there you go.
So the things I liked about the movie.
Name the thing you liked about the movie.
So I like the sets.
Sure.
They're a little bit cheesy at times, but I like, especially like the gold ship and stuff. Like everything had its own style.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I kept thinking like that would have been really cool to be on that set. And then the pug. So the Duke has a pug. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
the Atreides family pug.
And the pug makes it through the entire film alive.
Aww.
So that was pretty cool. You're looking at how long we've been recording.
Yeah, because man,
it's been a while.
How long?
Well, I can't give you an exact accurate, but maybe about an hour and a half. And we left a lot.
God help us! We
out
left
of that
so
movie.
much out. So much out. That's how long it takes to explain Dune.
So I was telling you that I read Roger Ebert's review.
Oh yeah, let me hear some of that.
He gave it 1 star.
1 star.
It starts with a quote. "It's like a dream," my friend from Hollywood was explaining. "It doesn't make any sense, and the special effects are straight from the dime store, but if you give up trying to understand it and just sit back and let it wash around in your mind, it's not bad."
All right.
He goes on to say, "It took Dune about 9 minutes to completely strip me of my anticipation. This movie is a real mess, an incomprehensible, ugly, unstructured, pointless excursion into the murkier realms of one of the most confusing screenplays of all time. Even the color is no good. Everything is seen through a sort of dusty yellow filter, as if the film was left out in the sun too long. Yes, you might say, but the action is, after all, on a desert planet where there isn't a drop of water, and there's sand everywhere. David Lean solved that problem in Lawrence of Arabia, where he made the desert look beautiful and mysterious, not shabby and drab." The movie's plot will no doubt mean more to people who've read Herbert than to those who are walking in cold.
That's very true.
Blah, 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 blah. It talks about the plot. The movie has so many characters, so many unexplained or incomplete relationships, and so many parallel courses of action that it's sometimes a toss-up whether we're watching a story or just an assembly of meditations on themes introduced by the novels.
He's actually being a little nicer to this than I thought he would be.
"The heads of the worms begin to look more and more as if they came out of the same factory that produced Kermit the Frog."
Aww.
They're not as good as Kermit the Frog. The spaceships in the movie are so shabby, so lacking in detail or dimension, that they look almost like those student films where plastic models are shot against the tablecloth. I get that. Nobody looks very happy in this movie. Actors stand around in ridiculous costumes, mouthing dialogue that has little or no context. Remember, I pointed out at one point, I said, like, could you imagine being an actor and getting the script and going, like, what the hell is this?
Sure. I can imagine that.
They're not even given scenes that work on a self-contained basis. Portentous lines of pop profundity are allowed to hang in the air unanswered while additional characters arrive or leave on unexplained errands. Dune looks like a project that was seriously out of control from the start. There's somebody playing some loud music outside.
I'll say.
Sets were constructed, actors were hired, no usable screenplay was ever written.
What?
Everybody faked it as long as they could. Some shabby special effects were thrown into the pot.
Oh, he's saying it looks that way.
And the producers crossed their fingers and hoped that everybody who has read the books will want to see the movie.
Ha.
Not if the word gets out, they won't.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty right on. I think you're right. I think he's being a little nicer than he probably needs to, especially given the history of Roger Ebert. Sometimes he just completely skewers a film.
Yeah. Sadly, in a lot of my research, it seems like David Lynch just never wants to talk about this movie at all. Can't entirely say I blame him. It's got a special place in my heart, but mostly because I read the book in high school. It took me months. I kind of love it. I love a lot of the concepts of it, and the movie is just a very quick way to just sort of dip back into those concepts, you know.
But you know, when I think of like movies of that era there were a lot of sci-fi movies, especially after Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
there were a lot of sci-fi movies that came out, and most of them are
Short
bad.
Circuit. Yeah.
None of them really bore me. Like,
wow, yeah.
Like I think to one of your favorites, Flash Gordon.
Oh yeah.
Not a great film, but a lot of fun to watch because
Absolutely.
it doesn't take itself so seriously.
Very true. Flash Gordon absolutely knows how goofy it is at times.
So I don't know. It just. I
understand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I saw it.
I'm glad you did too.
We've talked about this. I'm glad I saw it and it's out of the way, but it's not a movie I will probably ever go back to. Honestly, I'm glad we didn't watch an extended version of it.
Oh man!
You know, you showed me the prologue thing.
Yeah,
the extended prologue,
which I love.
It was like almost 7 minutes. I didn't like it. It immediately turned me off from the film because it's like, again, it's just a bunch of like. A bunch of exposition ahead of time with a whole bunch of names of people that I don't know. It can't reference. I can't really care about.
Okay.
Could you imagine if, you know, the opening crawl of Star Wars?
Yeah.
Could you imagine if that was 7 pages long? I mean, like, it wouldn't have worked.
Very good point.
You know, and there's a reason why that it wouldn't work. And when we watched the film, once we put the film in, and we got the truncated version of that
with
was
the very lovely Virginia Madsen.
It was like 3 sentences. it
was
like
much shorter.
It was, and I was like, okay, that's all I needed to know.
Yeah, going
into it, and that's part of the problem with this film is that it constantly thinks that you need to know more. Probably because there's a lot more information in the book. I respect that, and I acknowledge the desire to try and be true and be honest to the source material.
Yeah,
but like it just wasn't needed, and if they cut out all the stuff that wasn't needed in that film, that movie's an hour long.
Yeah, maybe. Ooh.
Bumping that mic.
Ooh, boy.
Sorry about that.
Dear.
So, yeah, I mean...
There it is. There's Dune. And if you viewsters out there watched it, you're welcome. But also, I'm sorry. But you're welcome.
Yeah.
It's a hoot.
Yeah.
It's a hoot of a movie.
So we have...
Should we move on to Jodorowsky's Dune?
Yeah, so here's the thing with Jodorowsky's Dune.
It's almost impossible to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really go through scene by scene and talk about the whole journey.
Right.
I think let's just kind of give it a little bit of a review.
Yeah.
Instead of going like super in depth into it.
I love it.
Essentially, it's the telling of Alejandro Jodorowsky, who did some really crazy films. If you've ever seen The Holy Mountain,
I have not.
Well, for the viewsters, if you've ever seen Holy Mountain, you kind of know he's a surrealist, and a lot of the stuff doesn't really feel like it makes sense. There's usually a reason behind most of the things that he does, but sometimes there isn't. Sometimes, things happen on camera because they just happen.
Yes.
As life is, right? Sometimes just stuff happens in life. But he's a visual genius. I think back to The Holy Mountain and the Rainbow Room, and
yeah, that Rainbow Room's intense.
It's really cool. I mean, it's just really cool.
And then that pile of like Jesus mannequins that that the other guy's walking through, and just all that wild. Yeah, could you imagine being a production designer on that?
Yeah, it's craziness.
Oh my gosh. Let's dig into Jodorowsky's Dune.
So this guy...
Well, it opens with a quote, and I'm actually ashamed of myself.
So I asked about that when it came up.
It opens with a quote, and the quote is, "What is to give light must be willing to endure burning."
Okay.
I think that's a pretty awesome quote for this movie, because what is ultimately happening is Jodorowsky is saying, I'm here trying to make this version of Dune that's going to like expand the consciousness of the world.
Yeah, he said it was life-changing. It would change people's lives.
Right. And so he's willing to endure the burning of giving that light. And I think that's pretty amazing. Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed to admit that I forgot who Viktor Frankl was.
And I didn't know who it was. So.
Viktor Frankl was a scientist and a Holocaust survivor.
Oh, wow.
Who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which is about his experience in the concentration camps.
Wow.
I think Auschwitz, but maybe a different camp. But I had to read it in college.
Yeah.
And it is just like tear your heart out. You know, it's about living through the concentration camps.
Yeah.
It's pretty much as harrowing a tale as you could ever possibly imagine. And it's about his true life experience. One of the stories I always remember from it is There's a moment where, his particular, bunk house has been given, like, a pot of soup, right?
Yeah.
And there's this one guy getting kind of greedy, waiting for his bowl of soup to get dished up. And he's like, no, man, like, scoop mine from the bottom. I want some of the food that's settled to the bottom. Scoop mine from the bottom. And I think it's Frankel himself or maybe one of the other guys starts laughing. And they're just like, what are you laughing about, dude? We haven't eaten in days. What's so funny? And he's like, I'm just, I'm imagining all of us as old men looking back on this moment and just thinking how funny it was that what's his name over there was saying, no, scoop from the bottom, scoop mine from the bottom. And it's like, it's just like the idea that dude had that kind of hope in that moment. You know what I mean? Is like, there's something just so beautiful about that. But yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. It's not a long book, and it, frankly should be required reading. It's intense, terrifying stuff.
So Jodorowsky made these films, these kind of crazy, really far out there films.
Really far out there.
He was an interesting artist.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are artists and they sort of they're real humble and they sort of reject the idea that they're artists because they never see their stuff as like good enough, and he was not one of those people.
Jodorowsky was he even says, like, I demand that, like, my dreams make it onto the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like an artist snob.
Sure. I can see that.
And so he went out to essentially, so if you could imagine the movie Ocean's 11.
All right.
Okay. If Ocean's 11, the crew, George Clooney, well, I mean, I'm talking about the new one. I guess you look at the Sinatra one too, but
I get what you mean.
Clooney and Brad Pitt, they're like snobby. They're like, we are the artists of thieves.
Right.
Like,
they know that they are as good as they are.
We're the greatest ever, and we are infallible.
Yeah.
I need to put together the best team of the most infallible people because we're going to, blah, blah, blah.
Rip off this casino.
If they were snobby people, that's essentially what this film is about. Jodorowsky was Danny Ocean trying to put together the perfect team to change the world.
I can agree with that. I don't know that the rest of them were all that snobby, though.
Well, I mean, when you think about like Salvador Dali.
Well, sure.
And
I feel like Mobius and certainly
I think
H.R. Giger came across as a non-snob.
Yeah, but like they even went to go and talk to, before they got Dan O'Bannon.
Yeah.
The guy that they Bill Trumbull.
Yeah.
Was one of those people, and that's what drew them to him, is that he was this artist who created this thing in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right. But then Jodorowsky says, like, he didn't have any spiritual warrior in him.
Yeah. Read between the lines is he can't work with another ego like that because his ego is like that. So what Jodorowsky, and this is maybe the smartest people do this.
Yeah.
I think so even someone like Donald Trump, who I don't think is an intelligent person, but I think he's very business acumen is pretty smart. Jodorowsky surrounded himself with people who would do what he wanted them to do, and would drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah,
but also were perfectly
talented,
skilled to bring his ideas to the page and to the screen.
I don't know that Dan O'Bannon's they showed Dark Star and a clip from Dark Star, and that was like the thing that convinced them that this was the guy to do their film. Like, I don't think that's a great resume fodder for doing this epic Dune thing. Like, but what they did,
watch Dark Star.
But what I think they probably did see was there's a dude who's like a free spirit, who I can tell him to sell all of his belongings and go to Paris, and he's going to do it. And
he did,
and that's what happened. And I'm not sure that Dan O'Bannon was like the best man for the job, but he was the easiest man to convince.
You may be right about that.
So Jodorowsky puts together this. He's like I said, he's the Danny Ocean, and he puts together this.
Yeah, you got
team.
Mobius, you got Dan O'Bannon,
you got Giger,
H.R. Giger, Chris Foss. Who am I forgetting?
David
Carradine.
David Carradine.
That was a great story. About David Carradine coming and eating all of his vitamin E.
But again, like he's finding these sort of like moldable, like you know, free spirits, right?
What about the Mick Jagger story? When he talks about how I wanted Mick Jagger to play,
and Mick Jagger was just like,
Fade Ralph the Harkonnen. Well, he says, and I go into this party, and I see Mick Jagger across the room, and he just starts walking right up to me, and I say, I want to put you in a movie, and he just said yes, and like that's pretty wonderful.
But like the Pink Floyd thing was like a really good example of so in the film, just to remind people, so he wants to have each of the different like planets that the people are from, they'll all have different themes, the different families will have different themes. So one of the themes was going to be he was going to have Pink Floyd do
the I think Planet Caladan.
Who's that? Who's from that?
The Atreides family, the good guys.
So the good guys will be all their music will be Pink Floyd. And so he went to go meet with Pink Floyd, and they're all eating hamburgers. And this is where that like snobby mentality comes from, and the ego comes in. And they're all like it's like they should have not been eating, or they should have put their hamburgers down, or they should have been eating something better for this momentous occasion because his ego is so big, right? It was really interesting. The guy's definitely a genius and definitely super, super talented.
He's on to something.
And I remember while we were watching it, I first of all, let me say, I enjoyed this movie a lot.
I love it.
It was about a topic that I don't care about.
Dune?
Dune, yeah. It was about Dune.
But it's also about filmmaking.
But it's about filmmaking. They found a really...
art and, sci-fi.
Yeah, but I don't know if I would be that into like a documentary about some other films that I don't like either.
Sure.
You know? But they found a engaging way to tell this story. A big piece of it is the interviews that they had, and even the fact that Dan O'Bannon isn't alive anymore, and they had audio recordings from him.
That was pretty awesome.
Helped really well. And then they also used modern film critics, people who are prone to enjoying sci-fi,
right?
Like Drew McWeeny from Hitfix.
What up, Drew?
What up, Drew? He's not listening to this. I don't know. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the documentary quite a bit. I enjoyed it much more than Dune.
Well, sure. It's a much more enjoyable thing to watch.
And I'm glad that it came up in this way.
I am
because
too.
If I had seen Dune, I never would have watched Jodorowsky's Dune unless I'd been made to do it. So, I appreciate the documentary.
I love it.
So let's talk about some of the other things that we liked about the documentary.
There's so much.
I like that he involved his son in his work.
Yeah, that was wild. Talking about like, I'm just gonna have my son do it, and I'm gonna make him. What is it? It said that he made him train with that Vino guy
7 days a week.
7 days a week, 6 hours a day, training in karate and jiu-jitsu and judo.
Yeah, he learned like 3 different kinds of martial arts. He learned how to.
That is insane.
He learned how to fight with knives. He learned how to fight with swords.
Yeah, he said he had to learn acrobatics.
Yeah.
Like, that is wild.
Yeah, that's
for
really
2 years, 7 days a week, 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
That's crazy.
Holy moly.
But his son, like, appreciated it, like, he has an appreciation for what he went through. And
I
love
want
for
to meet him in a dark alley, that's for sure.
And he has love for his father, despite, like, some other stories that say that something like that would happen, the people would resent the father.
Yeah.
And he has an appreciation for who his father is. I think he knows who his father is.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that when Brontes, the son, is telling a story at one point, he just refers to his dad as Alejandro. I thought that was very interesting. I don't think he ever said my dad. I think he almost always just referred to him as Alejandro. That's pretty wild. I love the story about Salvador Dali demanding $100,000 per hour.
And how they convinced him to do the role. So they wanted Salvador Dali to play the emperor, and it's not a very long scene. And Dali wanted $100,000 an hour. He wanted to be the highest paid actor in Hollywood. And so they came back and they were like, well, let's pay him for how much we actually use. So what if we said $100,000 per minute?
Yeah.
And he'll be like the $100,000 per minute guy.
Yeah.
And of course that's like, what a cool title,
Per minute on the screen.
On screen.
Yeah.
What's actually used.
So great.
Yeah, it was really, really smart. No pugs in this.
No pugs in this one. A kitty cat.
Yeah,
At one point,
shows up.
Jodorowsky brings his Siamese cat into the frame. H.R. Giger, live and on camera. That guy is a trip to watch, man. Like, it's funny because it's like, I mean, he's responsible for just some of the most nightmarish imagery maybe ever, you know? I mean, he designed the alien from Aliens. That is a scary, scary thing.
Yeah.
And then on camera, he's, you know, just kind of this, like...
portly.
Just a little bit of a chubby, kind of sweet, kind of almost like he doesn't exactly want to be interviewed, but, you know, he's enduring it with a smile on his face.
In Gruyere.
And Gruyere? Was he eating Gruyere?
No, he was in Gruyere.
Oh,
That's
in
where,
Gruyere.
Where Gruyere cheese comes from.
There you go. But yeah, like, it's just it was so wild. I don't think I'd ever seen Geiger in an interview before this movie. I've
never even seen a photo of the guy. I'm not like a Giger fan or anything.
Sure.
I mean, I appreciate his work.
Yeah.
But I'm not like
you never like hunted him down.
No.
Stalked him.
No.
At all.
I have friends that
do that to anyone.
I have friends that have like Giger books, but that's not my thing.
Wild stuff. Richard Stanley shows up a couple times. He's got a pretty fun documentary about him trying to make, starting to make the first half of The Island of Dr. Moreau with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, and then about, you know, the fiasco that became that whole production. That's a doozy of a movie right there, man. I suggest you watch it. It should still be on Netflix. It's called Lost Souls.
Right.
You'll get a kick out of it. And I also just watched Richard Stanley's Hardware on Netflix the other day.
Yeah, I've not seen it.
That's something else. Not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of really disgusting language in it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Dylan McDermott versus a robot.
Okay. I liked that this movie, like, ultimately the sad part is that their journey didn't really amount to anything.
Yeah.
Because people just didn't understand him.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't think it would have been a life-changing film, his movie. I don't think...
we'll never know.
I mean, they show us a lot of what he had planned.
Yeah.
And knowing the limitations of the age, I think it would have been really dated. I think it would have come... I think now it would... Because, like, it's interesting how dated Star Wars is, but how well it holds up.
Right.
I think this, like, idea of the future and what he wanted to do...
Yeah.
I think there's some parts of it that were genius, like the extremely long shot that he wanted to do at the beginning was genius.
And when they show that, just in that super, like, crude artwork,
and
it's still awesome looking.
The storyboards,
yeah,
it was really cool. But yeah, I don't feel like it would. I would like to see that movie.
Yeah, I would absolutely love.
I would love for somebody to make it.
I wonder what it would take
to get it made like that.
I wonder if John Hodgman's story about Peter Berg on an airplane could lead to those guys deciding we are going to make Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yeah, somehow doubt that Peter Berg is definitely his own kind of filmmaker. Sure. I'd be really surprised to see him venture out of his comfort zone into something so surreal. But also like to basically say, well, to hell with all of my shots. Let's use all this guy's shots. I right. Somehow doubt that's going to happen, but you never know, I guess.
You never know. It'd be so wild. Like, to be able to see those ideas with today's special effects.
Well, it's interesting at the end.
Forget about it, man. Holy moly.
At the end of the documentary, they show all these, like, shots that are inspired by or maybe were ripped off or whatever.
Oh, yes. You took a little bit of umbrage with that moment.
I felt like they were making an implication that because right before that they make a point of saying all of the studios got this book,
right?
And then they all turned me down, and then they all used stuff from my book.
Yeah,
kind of implying that maybe the studios kind of stole the ideas. But if you read the fine print, if you read what they don't say, what they put on in text on the screen, several of the instances where it was very clear that they used stuff from the Dune Bible, the pitch Bible. The same people that he had put on his team were working on those projects, and not just working on those projects, but like working in the same capacity on those projects.
Yeah.
Where it was like a Giger thing.
Working with Ridley
Scott.
Alien and
he did Alien.
little bit of Blade Runner, I think.
Yeah. And Prometheus. And they show like some similar stuff from Prometheus. But it's like those things, like, if it was a different designer and they used those things, I would have like bought into it. But the fact that it was Giger and Ridley Scott had such a close relationship, and it was those things, and the same thing, it was like somebody else in Mobius had worked on this movie, and it was like they were sort of implying
they did a similarity between Mobius's designs for the Emperor and Skeletor from the Masters of the Universe.
And Mobius worked on Masters of the Universe as the designer. So it's like if it had been a different designer and then they had those things, I would have been like, I would have totally bought it. But I felt like the implication was, unlike Dune, they didn't explain things, like
interesting.
But at the same time, I do acknowledge that even if you exclude that idea that they took, that maybe the studios stole his work.
Yeah.
If you exclude that idea, it does show how influential and how smart those things, those decisions, and those designs were, because they definitely worked in those other things.
Oh yeah.
So
even Gold Skeletor.
Yeah, even Gold Skeletor.
Like, even when that moment happens in Masters of the Universe, right. Skeletor goes from his usual white-faced, dark cloaked, hooded self to this crazy gold antlered demigod. It's still cool.
Yeah, it's still really cool.
Unfortunately, it's in Masters of the Universe.
But yeah, so I mean, it is really neat to see like how influential. I don't know if I bought the Raiders of the Lost Ark stuff, but
I felt like those similarities were real close.
Well, there was a few times that, and a couple other things I can't remember off the top of my head, where I thought, it was something else that started out in space.
Contact?
Maybe Contact, where it was like, I've had that idea. Like,
okay.
And I had never seen Dune or Jodorowsky's Dune. Like, it's not like there are some instances where I think you can have similar ideas.
Yeah.
And that's just what happens with artists, right? Like, artists are always thinking of a new way to do something. And I don't think it's unheard of for two different artists to do the same thing.
Fair enough.
We're seeing that right now with Amy Schumer, and people are saying that she's stealing jokes and things, and she's claiming, hey, sometimes comedians will think the same, and do really, really similar jokes, and it happens.
It happens.
So I'm not sure I bought all of them.
All right.
Just because you have a long shot going through space, I don't think that's you stealing from Jodorowsky. I certainly don't think he's the first person to think of it either.
Name a movie other than 2001 that involves space.
Right. So it's like name something other than something that was done before he even considered doing Dune. So it's like, it's loud cars outside.
I'll say.
So yeah, I didn't buy all of that, but
would you ever watch this documentary again?
Probably not.
Really? I'm thinking about watching it again tonight.
I think once was enough for me.
I love it.
I think not because of the documentary so much, but because of the subject matter. I just don't care about Dune. I didn't care about Dune, and I didn't want to watch it prior to this. I'm glad I've seen it. I still don't care about it, though. I don't feel like David Lynch's Dune has any lasting impact on Hollywood or science fiction films. I think if somebody made Jodorowsky's Dune, I think I would be interested in checking it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think that the story of Jodorowsky's Dune
does
have an impact on Hollywood and does have a place. But it's just not... It's still, nevertheless, a topic I don't really care about. I would have to have some time away from it.
Yeah.
And probably the scenario would be somebody who... Like, I was talking about it with someone.
Yeah.
They didn't know the story. All and I was like, well, you probably need to see the story. Then maybe watch it with them.
All right.
but I definitely would recommend it to people.
Me too. Did you know that Dune got me on the California Screamin' roller coaster the other night?
Did it?
Yup.
Explain.
All right. So we were, Tiff was there, and she was like,
cool.
"Oh yeah,
Tiff.
sure.
Tiff's the best.
I'd be really impressed if you rode that roller coaster." And I was
That's
like,
kind of how
I'm
it
not gonna
happened.
do it. It's kind of how it happened.
A little bit.
But
Like Dune,
what
he's leaving stuff
ultimately
out.
did it, what ultimately did the trick, was I remembered the line, "Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that leads to total obliteration." And I said, you know what? I'm done being afraid of this roller coaster.
I think you're a filthy liar right now.
Yes, this beautiful brunette is saying she'll be impressed and that she'll have some sort of special treat for us when we get off the roller coaster. But also, I need to face this fear.
I think you're a filthy liar.
No, this is absolutely true.
Really?
I was at that podium, and I was just like, I was listening to Tiff, and I had my own inner monologue whispering, and it said, you know what this is, man? This is a fear. Fear is the mind killer.
That's
and I
funny.
was like, gotta do it. Gotta ride that roller coaster, man.
So for those that don't follow our Instagram or didn't see it on Facebook or Twitter, Steve and I, we talked about in the last episode we were going to go to Disneyland.
The next day, we did.
We are men of our word, and we went to Disneyland, and Steve has ridden just about every ride at Disneyland, both parks, as have I.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to get him to go on this roller coaster called California Screamin'.
It's an intense ride.
It's got a loop.
I don't like loops.
And I spent a significant amount of our evening near the end of the night.
There were sort of
suggesting we should do
several
Conversations.
salvos of
yeah,
influential attack.
like we should do this. I don't know, kind of attack, but then there was a moment where it was like I could see it in his eyes, like he could do it.
Yeah,
he could do it.
And then you got a beautiful brunette involved, and sometimes that's all it takes.
That worked well. And then when she said, "I'll have something for you when you get off," I was like, "We gotta go on it." So we did go on it.
But Dune is what ultimately kicked me onto that roller coaster.
But the reward was a handwritten button, and she gave us free churros.
2 free churros.
So that was my first Disneyland churro. I've been going to Disneyland for years and
it's pretty tasty.
Never had a churro in the park before.
I don't know if it's worth $4.25, but it's pretty tasty.
It was pretty good. It was certainly grate free.
Del Taco makes better churros.
I don't know.
There, I said it. 2 for 99 cents.
I you know what? We got churros that were fresh and hot as well.
True.
They were like, the guy was like, "Can you wait a minute and I'll make you
that,
new ones?" And we were like, "Yeah."
Tiff, if you're listening, we'll see you soon, I imagine.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm going back soon enough. I got to
so.
go twice this month, baby. Hey.
We should draw the next movie.
We should. Present the Muppet Bucket.
All right.
I get to pick this for you to watch with who? You're going to be watching this movie with...
Daniel Weiss.
Daniel Weiss, star of FX's...
The People vs. O.J.
People vs. American Crime Story. The People vs. O.J. Simpson.
Let's say flip the title around. Now it's The People vs. O.J. American Crime Story because people were getting it confused with American Crime.
There's that other show, American Crime.
Yeah.
Understandable.
So Daniel Weiss will be joining me for next week's episode where we are going to watch... Draw it, Steve. Do it. Oh, my God. It's taking so long.
Oh, man. It is... Ooh... Woody Harrelson in Rampart.
All right.
I have seen Rampart.
I have not. In for a treat, huh?
I'm trying to remember what I liked and loved about Rampart, but I'll save it for after you guys see it.
So Daniel and I have our own bucket for his. He's going to come on occasionally and help out, and I've got another 1 or 2 people that will also do occasional guest spots. But so each person is getting their own bucket. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. So I'll let Daniel know what we're going to watch, and we'll get on that for next week.
Looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah, will you listen to it?
I'll absolutely listen to it.
Sweet.
I mean, it's still our show.
Yeah,
I'll absolutely listen to it.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening and sticking with us through this long episode.
If you made it all the way through this and still haven't seen Dune and Jodorowsky's Dune, do yourself a favor and go watch both.
At least watch Jodorowsky's Dune. Just a reminder, I swear we're going to one movie, and we're changing up the host. Although that changing up the host is not by my choice. because I love having Steve.
I'm
on here.
getting too busy, man.
He's too busy, but
and I gotta. I'm trying to juggle all these different things.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give any one thing up.
Yeah. Well, thank you again to Steve, and
thank you,
thank
Wes.
you to the listeners, and especially thank you to Dwayne for doing our intro once again. You are a mensch.
Oh, and hey, thanks to Travis
say.
Stevens for always supporting our texts and our tweets about Jodorowsky's Dune.
Travis Stevens is a producer on Jodorowsky's Dune, so thank you very much. I enjoyed the movie, and
I might watch it again right now. Say it.
Bon cinema.